Coming up on this episode of Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover.
It's going to happen at some point. If Caleb Williams stays healthy in his career, it's going to happen. I don't see why not this year. I don't see why not. It's about time. I'll be very glad for that not to be a thing anymore.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining us again at Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover. We're here with our second NFL Division Preview show. This time we're looking at the NFC North. If you missed the first one, the NFC South, go check that out. It's in the feeds, the YouTube videos, Spotify, Apple. It's all there ready waiting for you to go. But NFC North is our focus. We've got a great guest joining us, Ben Isaacs, friend of the show, from the Nat Coombs Podcast, College Daze Podcast, author extraordinaire as well. Ben's going to join us to talk about the Chicago Bears. But before we do that, Byron, Joe, gentlemen, how are we? Episode 2 of the Division Preview Series. You're looking forward to get stuck into the NFC North?
Yeah, we're going from the worst division in football to the best, maybe. Very interesting one again, though, for very, very interesting teams. Different off-season, certainly. And, yeah, still at World Cup fever here in Chicagoland. Sadly, I also have COVID fever, so it's been a rough couple of weeks. But, yeah, I look forward to diving into these 4 teams because it's a really interesting division. So, and chatting to Ben.
Excellent. Yeah, we're recording. This will be out Saturday, I think. So we're a day before England play Mexico in the Azteca. I don't know, you might not have seen it, given I'm not sure how close you follow the UK media and stuff now, obviously given you both over the other side. Pubs officially open till 5 a.m. UK time for the England-Mexico game, which is...
And a little different as well. I've seen a few schools have posted that they're going to do watch parties at 9 a.m, so don't tell their kids their result, and your kids can come in and watch it. And it's just, I'm thinking, like, some kids are going to ruin it for everybody. Mm-hmm. Like, if kids are like they were when I was a kid, then at least one little troll monster will stay up and watch the game and come in and say, like, oh, England win 2-0 comfortably.
You're very optimistic with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of like how I try and watch Sunday night football. Is like, I just can't stay up anymore. It's just like, I'll try and avoid the score and watch it in the morning before work, which very rarely happens successfully. Excellent. Joe, how are you doing? Canada made it through another round.
Yeah, it was a good game on Sunday. Yeah, it was great for them scoring in the last minute. So moving on to Morocco on Saturday. So it was Canada Day on Wednesday the 1st. So I got to celebrate England winning. Like aged me 10 years in terms of watching that. But no, doing all good. As Byron said, excited to talk about this division because it's a little bit different from the NFC South, where it feels like in the NFC there's probably 2-3 teams who are they're the favorites, they're the strong teams, and then there's about 6 to 7 teams where you're they could do well, they might not do, and I think for at least 3 of these teams in this division, someone could argue for all 4 teams being in that position of they maybe not be the strongest in the top 3, but they're certainly there and have chances. So it's a really fun division and a really competitive one.
Excellent. Right, well, let's get to it anyway. The first team we're going to look at is the Chicago Bears. Again, we've got Ben Isaacs joining us, so let's get over to me and Ben breaking down the 2026 Chicago Bears. Kicking off our NFC North preview, we've got returning guest and friend of the show now, I think we can say. We've got Ben Isaacs from the Nat Coombs Podcast, the College Daze Podcast as well, and, of course, the author of The American Football Revolution, How Britain Fell in Love with the NFL, which we'll talk about in a bit more detail in a second. Ben, welcome back to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be able to talk about the Bears without it feeling just like total desperation. Actually being able to look forward to a season of Chicago Bears football, which I don't know how it'll go exactly. I've got some ideas, but I can feel positive anticipation rather than dread.
Yeah, it's a great place to be. I think we caught you at a real good moment when the first time you came on was during the playoffs. So it was a great time to be a Chicago's Bears fan. Beating the Packers in the playoffs. We'll talk about that in certainly a bit more detail. But it just feels like a much better team to be a supporter of, a much better place to be than kind of the dread and the doldrums of just can't get out their own way for such a long time.
Yeah, it's a team now with an identity, a team with a head coach that we as Bears fans are all absolutely in love with. I think so is my wife a little bit. There's just so much to feel good about, and I'm confident it's not like this. But after Matt Nagy's first season, I was all in on Matt Nagy. Not as much as I am on Ben Johnson, but I was all in on Matt Nagy. And then a few years later, when Justin Fields was drafted, I was all in on Justin Fields. Like my daughter, who was too young to be saying this, really, but she was like, "You talk about him like he's the son you never had," and I didn't have a response to that because it's like, yeah, I probably do. I probably had more affection for Justin Fields then than I do for Caleb Williams now, and I think that's just because I was hurt, and I don't blame Justin Fields for that. I still wish him great success. I don't think, oh, curse you, Fields. But the love I had for Justin Fields was so deep and so pure. And I've tried to keep Caleb a little bit at arm's distance. But, I mean, they're just like night and day. Those two
making it difficult, right? Making it difficult to keep them at arm's length with certainly how 2025 went. And before we are going to get into the in-depth conversation on the Bears, but Ben, so you are always a busy man. We've seen you. I think we were talking about 3 different kind of shows this week. You worked with the Nat Coombs Show. College Days, you've just dropped an episode, I think, with Dom and Murph, who's friend of the show. So can't wait to get to that. Yeah, what else have you had going on then inside kind of the recordings and the podcast? You just seem to be everywhere right now.
Yeah, I was doing. I did a college football podcast yesterday. Recently, I did a talk at South by Southwest. That was, to be asked to do that was incredible. That was about the datafication of the global fan, and being there and like my God, I'm used to talking to NFL fans, but to be there with like a load of kind of tech people with money to spend, I'm there thinking, oh God, do I need to like pitch an app to these guys? And I don't know what that would be. Otherwise, perhaps I would already be some sort of app millionaire.
Yeah, these things you can get from 0 to kind of 100 on those things quite quickly. So we'll get you better prepped next time. The book as well. Let's talk about the book because we talked about it a bit last time when you came on. But for anybody that missed that or doesn't know about your book, then The American Football Revolution: How Britain Fell in Love with the NFL. I read it over the last couple of months. It is absolutely fantastic. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about it and more importantly, where we can get it?
It's a story of all of us. Anyone who is a fan of the NFL in the UK, this is our story. And the way I wanted to do it basically, I woke up one morning and it all came to me. Like the whole thing. I woke up, the whole thing had come to me and I had to plan it out. And somehow, I found a publisher before the end of the day, which is not how it's meant to happen. And I think I just got lucky that they perhaps needed something of a different sport, and it was like maybe the cutoff of like, we've got to decide what all our books are going to be for this particular quarter coming up. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to have the fans' voices in there. So each chapter is the perspective of a particular fan who sums up that era. So it goes through from 1982, which is when the NFL was first broadcast in the UK, through to the modern day. And what I didn't want it to be was like pat on the back for those fans who've been around since the 80s. Like, you're the true heroes here. I love them. I've been around since the 80s. They are great. But there are plenty of modern fans who I'm not going to discredit just because they weren't born at that time. So many people who are younger have done so much to bring people into this sport and have played a massive role in all of that. So I think anyone who reads it, who's into the sport and is from this country, they'll find the whole story fascinating, but I think they'll find at least one person in that book that they think, this is my story. Like, this is me. And for some people, it's going to be more than one of those chapters. Like, yeah, fantasy football is what brought me in. I didn't have an interest in the sport. And some people were like, oh, look at this. And even one person who basically they'd watched Hard Knocks and then they found it just the most interesting sport to bet on. that there is the most value in any sport in the NFL, and there's so much great research that you can do. And I do not need to convince you of this point, but it is a fantastic betting sport, and there's just so much that you can do to enjoy that side of it. So there's a chapter just of that. So you can get it basically everywhere. People often say to me, "Oh, where's the best place for me to get it? Like, what's the biggest cut that you'll get?" Makes no difference. I get a flat amount from the publisher for each one sold, no matter where it's sold, no matter what price it's sold at. So anywhere, whatever is easiest for you, that's probably going to be Amazon. If you do read it and like it, please consider leaving a review on Amazon, because that actually makes a really big difference to getting the book recommended to people when they're scrolling through other American football books. So that would mean a lot if you gave a review.
Yeah, absolutely. Go get it. The Amazon link is in the episode description. So if you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcast, scroll down in the episode description. The link's there. Hit it. Go buy Ben's book, The American Football Revolution, How Britain Fell in Love with the NFL. It is absolutely fantastic. Does beg the question, Ben. That's one book. Is there the next project? Like what is there something in the works, the pipeline? What are you doing next?
I cannot talk about that yet. So let's just say maybe.
Okay.
Let's wait and see.
Okay. Well, we will keep bringing you back on, and we will keep asking you the question until we find out what may or may not be. Cool. Good stuff. Well, you say any future projects go by the way that this one's done, it's also going to be fantastic. So yeah, go support Ben and go buy the book. It's a fantastic read. Kept me entertained while I was on holiday in Italy on the flights and stuff. So I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you very much. Let's talk about your Chicago Bears then. We just set it up to start with. Great time to be a Chicago Bears fan. A lot of optimism. Season went. From where kind of the Bears were entering 2025, is that kind of as well as it could have gone, or did that kind of surpass your expectations, Ben, in terms of winning the division, beating the Packers when it mattered, getting a playoff win?
It absolutely surpassed expectations. It was the character they showed. Obviously, there were all these crazy comebacks, but there is an insane number of like Bears YouTube channels, and all of them wanted to do breakdowns of all of these comebacks. How did these happen? And I've seen enough comebacks. And if I look back to and we are going back here, the 2001 NFL season, the Bears went 13-3. They won the division. That was not a good Bears team. That was my first visit to Soldier Field as well. And I saw an incredible comeback at Soldier Field, one of the most famous games at Soldier Field. The Bears coming back to beat the 49ers. It was a bad Bears team, right? But they got all these crazy fluky wins. And we just knew as Bears fans that only two teams had beaten the Bears that season. The Ravens in the season opener, and they got swept by the Packers. And the Packers were just a really reliable team that season. And the Bears were a very lucky team. So the Bears won the division. And we all just thought, there's no way this Bears team is going to win a playoff game. Like, they're going to be at home in the playoffs and they're going to lose. And they did. They lost immediately. This Bears team, yes, there were these crazy comebacks, but they weren't flukes, because each time it was Ben Johnson changing things that were able to make the offense do something that could bring it back. The magic of Caleb Williams, of course, but there are certain throws that people kind of think are like, oh, just throwing it up for grabs. But actually, those are plays they've been setting up all the way through the game. This is obviously what smart coaches do. So although there were wins there that were like they got through by the skin of their teeth, I don't think they were fluky or lucky. It was not that sort of season. They showed so much character. Like, you don't feel like the bounce of the ball is going to happen that many times again next season. But generally, it was just incredible coaching. And it was so satisfying to watch and so fun to watch. I'm not sure there was a more fun team in the NFL last season than the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, I'd agree. They were just must watch. It was just incredible stuff, whether it was from the comebacks, the explosive plays on offense, whether it was kind of these magic Caleb moments or just that ability that they'd found, just incredible rushing attack that they had, which kind of we knew likely to come from kind of what Ben Johnson had going in Detroit. But yeah, just all elements of it, the eye-catching turnovers. We'll talk about that, I imagine, when we talk about the secondary and defense shortly. Took the ball away the most, gave away the ball the least. It was just, could not take your eyes off it for sure. And pushed the Rams close in the playoffs. I think that was the game that we previewed when you came on back in January. And after a really good win, it was a big win over the Packers in the playoffs. They really kind of pushed the Rams to the limit. A very, very good Rams team to their absolute limits in the divisional round.
Yeah, I mean, the interception that was thrown was DJ Moore's fault, unfortunately, and a lot of Bears fans were really critical of him. And it's like, my God, like they would not be in the divisional round if not for fantastic plays by DJ Moore in the previous week. And you've got to take the rough with the smooth. If he's made a mistake and it's been picked off, the Bears actually probably should have won that game. And I don't think they would have won in Seattle, but they should have beaten the Rams, even though I think the Rams are a better team, were then and will be next season a better team. The Bears should have actually won that one. They should have taken advantage of it being at Soldier Field. And then who knows what happens in Seattle. I think if there'd been a crazy win over the Seahawks, I'm confident the Bears would have beaten that Patriots team. The Rams and the Seahawks were the two best teams in the NFL, and the Bears should have beaten the Rams. But I'm not saying they were the third best team in the NFL. I don't think that was the case.
Yeah, it's a very, very tight game. The Rams won 2017 and then moved on. But yeah, again, we just feel the expectations now because we're getting into kind of the postseason, winning the division. Things ratchet up a little bit. And let's have a look. We just talked about DJ Moore a little bit there. Let's head into our headlines. And that's the first one that we've, I suppose, got to talk about. More or less DJ remixed for a second-round pick. Youth movement takes over the pass-catching core as Bears move on from proven vet at wide receiver. Luther to take the burden, or do all roads lead to Rome? And apologies for the horrific puns shoehorned in there. Yeah. And where does that sort of leave that? Because DJ Moore, he's probably like, that was kind of the veteran present. It is just youth now. But it's Burden, it's Adunze, it's Loveland. That's kind of what's there now from a pass catching perspective. Do you feel they've got the balance? Have they got the balance right with what's there, or are they missing a piece? Do you think, Ben?
No, I think that's right. I think moving on from DJ Moore was the right move, not because DJ Moore was a bad player, but his importance within that offense was declining. It's not an offense that is reliant on a clear number one wide receiver. It's an offense that is based on being able to spread the ball around. Rome Odunze has got to step up. I love Rome Odunze, but injuries curtailed his season last year. He was off to a really fast start. I can't remember how many touchdowns in the first few games. And then he had an injured foot and things were not right. Luther Burden really came on. Colston Loveland really hit the ground running. I feel good about those three as the main three pass catchers in that offense. There are other pieces as well, but it's got to be spread around. There's no point having like, oh, I've always got to look for DJ Moore. And then what are you doing with Luther Burden? What are you doing with Rome Odunze? What are you doing with Colston Loveland? It's going to get spread around. There's easily a future where Caleb hits the mythical 4,000 yard mark, but perhaps no wide receiver or tight end gets 1,000 yards individually because DeAndre Swift's going to catch it out of the backfield and all this other stuff. So I think they've done the right thing. And I think they did DJ Moore a solid, basically. They helped him find the right sort of landing spot. There was no animosity. He knew that the direction the Bears were taking, and neither side were looking to screw each other over or, badmouth one another. So I think it'll work out for DJ Moore, but it's the right move for the Bears offense as it stands. Yeah,
I think they got real good value for him. I think it was more than a fair kind of price that they got for him that kind of set them up and spend that. So seems like a good balance, sort of right move for everyone. Is this the year? Let's ask the question: Is this the year that we get the 4,000 yard pass event for the Bears?
The sensible answer is yes, especially because, you know, it's a 17-game season nowadays. He's not being compared to Jay Cutler coming close in 16. I think Eric Kramer still holds the record for the most passing yards in a season, whether that's per game or over the course of the season. It's going to happen at some point. If Caleb Williams stays healthy in his career, it's going to happen. I don't see why not this year. I don't see why not, but it's about time. I'll be very glad for that not to be a thing anymore.
Yeah, just kind of this stat just to beat the Bears fans and the Chicago Bears over the head with. Yeah, it was he was like 50 odd yards away, right? I think it was 58 yards away. So yeah, I think it is due to happen. If he plays all 17 games, I think it's happening. I think for sure this year. As well, there's one way to find out. No doubt that'll be one of the guys' bets later on in the episode.
Oh yeah,
Caleb Williams over 4,000 yards for sure. Let's go to headline number 2 then. Again, another exit one. That's all man. Drew in shock retirement. Coming off a Pro Bowl campaign, center Drew Dalman retires at just 27 years old, leaving the Bears in the middle of nowhere. Can Bradbury or Jones fill the void? So, yeah, this one just seemed to come out of the blue and really kind of hear any rumblings beforehand that there was the possibility of Drew Dalman, and then all of a sudden, yeah, he's walked away. How big, especially due to how big of an impact he had last year in the middle of that line and the positive impact that it had on the running game, and also kind of the time that Caleb got a little bit more with that offensive line. How big a miss is this Dalman just sort of walking away?
I think it's massive, and it really did come out of nowhere. I think he was a really underrated part of why that offense worked, why they were able to run the ball, why Caleb was able to feel so comfortable behind an offensive line that had failed him a season before. He was brilliant. Drew Dalman was absolutely brilliant. And it was like, that's a problem solved now that he's there. And it was just completely out of the blue. And it then changes how you approach everything. So they had to spend a decent amount of money on Garrett Bradbury, who's good. He's not Drew Dalman, though. He's good. They drafted Logan Jones, who I think can be a starter, but he's not going to be a starter next season. Because of Drew Dalman's age, they should have been looking to get like 5 years plus out of him. He should have been such an integral part of that offensive line. I was absolutely gutted, and I've got to say, I didn't realize how much I'd overlooked his importance during the course of the season, because as soon as he disappeared, it was then I thought, oh, wait there. Oh, my God. He was the cornerstone of that offensive line, that there were things that just wouldn't have happened if he wasn't playing as well as he did. And it's not to say I was caught by surprise when he got a Pro Bowl nod, but I don't really value Pro Bowl selections. I think they're kind of meaningless with the way that they're voted for. But it took him retiring and me to think what a massive hole that is to fully appreciate him. So that was being the low point of the off season as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it feels like there's going to be a lot of work to do, because it's hard to replace them when you've got if you have a settled O-line and an O-line that's played well, you want to keep those 5 together, but it's especially hard when it's the center, it's the communication, it's the time with the quarterback, it's all those pieces that are you just have to kind of rework it all again, and it just feels like it's key that they get this right, and it feels like it's going to be Bradbury, right? I think I can't see that it will be Jones to start, but Bradbury's kind of had the 5 or 6 years in Minnesota. He's had a year at the Patriots. Don't know if he's the right man, but he's going to have a lot of pressure to get it right. And have you got sort of faith in the coaching staff though, and what they've done to kind of get that O-line in the spot anyway, that they can kind of work through this?
I do have faith that they will be able to maximize his ability, but it's less ability than Drew Dalman had. Yeah. He doesn't have the upside of Logan Jones, but I am not comfortable with the idea of putting Logan Jones there, unless he looks absolutely incredible in minicamp and OTAs, and then in preseason. And even then, it's like just go with the veteran for now, and let's see what happens.
Excellent. Let's move on to the next part. Again, all change in the secondary for the Bears. Secondary shuffle as back end overhauled. easy for me to say, opportunistic defense broken up as Bears opt to get younger and more athletic. Will refresh be enough to solve a porous back end? So then we talked about that, and that's also a terrible choice of phrasing as well. We talked a lot about around how good the defense was in terms of being very opportunistic, turning the ball over, but it was still going behind them a lot. They were still giving up big plays. Is this the right call in terms of swapping it out? Because it's hard to lose that many turnovers, and we talk about how important they are in the game. But is this the right call long term in terms of having a more secure secondary for the Bears?
So people like to feel that there's a random nature to turnovers, and there is a certain amount of truth to that. Interceptions generally aren't based on luck. It isn't like, oh, the cornerback was in the right place at the right time. The cornerback is putting himself in that place, or the quarterback of the opposition is throwing bad passes. It isn't simply like, oh, the ball happens to be up in the air and I'm the one nearest. That's generally not how it works. Fumbles, you can cause fumbles. The Bears used to kind of build a defense on that. Shout out to Peanut Tillman and Peanut Punch. There's a reason that the Bears forced more fumbles than any team for many seasons because of the fact they were doing that. But fumbles, there is a more random nature because that ball comes out and it can bounce any direction. It isn't simply going to be falling into the hands of the defense. It's a bit of a strange one because you look at the key takeaways that Bears defense had, and on the surface, it feels like, oh, the defense played well. Defense did not play well. This was a defense that was talent poor, basically. A lot of people earning a lot of money, but not enough pass rush. Too many missed tackles. Too many big plays allowed by the secondary, and then bailing themselves out with a crucial interception or something. I felt something needed to change with the defense because I wouldn't feel comfortable rolling into the next season thinking, well, okay, we're going to get those interceptions again. We're going to get those fumbles again because Dennis Allen is one of the best defensive coordinators in the league. So those will happen. I can't feel confident about that. And nobody should ever feel confident that a team will replicate the amount of takeaways that they've made. You can replicate the fundamentals of pass rush, regular pass rush, making tackles at the first level, breaking up passes constantly. The Bears were not doing those things. The secondary, it's all change there. All change. Bringing in younger players, bringing in Kobe Bryant, who I really like, Dylan Thieneman in the draft. These are players who I expect to be upgrades, but it's tough having so much turnover. I do have a lot of faith in Dennis Allen, but the Bears have still not addressed the pass rush issue, which the Bears were not getting to quarterbacks anywhere near enough. Montez Sweat is a good pass rusher. He is a good edge to have, but he's not great, and he's having to do all the work. I really wanted the Bears to get an edge in the draft. It didn't happen. There was no one who was available for decent money in free agency. So I'm disappointed that what the line will look like going into the next season. I don't think there's a whole lot they could have done, but I think they should have addressed it the previous season. It is a major weakness. The Bears defense, I mean, we're in bizarro world. The Bears defense looks a bit of a mess compared with this exciting pass-happy offense. No one's ever said that about the Bears, but it is now true. This is the future that we're living in. But Dennis Allen, to say it again, I think is one of the best DCs in the league. He's not a head coach, but he is a DC. And again, he will maximize those players. And I feel if he was happy enough to see those players leave and bring in other people that he had chosen, then I have faith in his ability to assess what he wants for his defensive scheme.
Yeah, feels like it's still just to see they do need a bit light pass rush. I don't know if that's where it comes out when we go through sort of the training camps, the vets that are knocking about, people like Jadeveon Clowney, the perennial gun for hire, who just seems to just come in, will get you 8 to 10 sacks, go on his merry way, and somebody may feel just to try and help it out a little bit more. But I said there's a long way to go before the start of the season, but helps think again, if you can get that kind of secondary settled a bit more, feels like they've got the right profile of players to do so now, and we'll see if that kind of calms down. And it helps, if you have a solid at the back, it makes it easy for the guys up front to go chase that quarterback. we'll see. Thieneman we mentioned Thieneman is I suppose was the first round pick. I, for one, sat on draft night, was convinced surely the Vikings are going to take him at 18, and they just never did. Seemed the perfect fit. What are you expecting to see out of him? He looked fantastic at Oregon. Very excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, I think he can make an impact sooner than most rookies do. Exactly the sort of player this defense needs. He's instinctive. He's always around the football. I wish it had been an edge rusher with his talent level, but that's not who was available. It was him. And he seems ideal. I'm looking forward to watching play the way that he flies around. I think he's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, actually should make instant impact. And then we've talked a lot about the roster and the team itself and the players. The last story is more off the field, and it feels like a little bit of a Chicago Bears way of running things. Like, things are starting to go well. We're getting the right pieces in. We've made great coaching move. We've got our guy at quarterback. Everything's ticking along nicely. And then they're just making a mess of this stadium move. Sweet home, Hammond, Indiana. New stadium saga enters its 5th year as Bears play dangerous game with 2 state governments. Have they bluffed themselves into a corner? So I suppose the overarching thing is the Bears don't own Soldier Field. They, I suppose, lease it from the city. Then there's pressure on the Bears from the NFL, other owners, for them to kind of have an upgraded stadium or a new stadium to help the franchise become worth, $8 billion instead of $7 billion or whatever it is. They bought the land in Arlington Heights, which is, I think, 15 to 20 miles away from Soldier Field, but still in Chicago. And now they're negotiating 15 to 20 miles the other way over the state line in the city of Hammond, Indiana. What do you sort of make of this? Because surely we can't be in a situation where we don't have the Bears in Chicago.
Well, there are lots of people in Chicago who would say Arlington Heights is not Chicago. It is, quote unquote, the suburbs, and thus not Chicago proper. However, there is a large area that is known as Chicagoland, and that covers the suburbs, and it covers that corner of Indiana, quite a large corner of Indiana, to be fair. I mean, before the Colts came from Baltimore, they were rabid Bears fans, and a lot of the state is still rabid Bears fans, which is why they were more than happy to make a move for the Bears, because it's so close to those population centers. So if you were getting in a car driving from Soldier Field to the site in Hammond or the site in Arlington Heights, you might actually get to Hammond before you got to Arlington Heights. It is that close. It is just across the state line. But the thing is that, the Bears have their song, Bear Down Chicago Bears, the pride and joy of Illinois. How can you have your team song saying the pride and joy of Illinois if you leave the state, even if it is just a few feet over the state line? Now, like you say, they bought a giant site in Arlington Heights. They had unveiled all the things they were going to do at this site, because the thing is, the McCaskies aren't going to sell the Bears, right? That family have owned the Bears since 1920. Like, they're not selling the team, but the NFL would like it if that team was worth more money, like you say. And really the only way to do that is to own a load of land, have a big stadium, have an entertainment complex. It's a big reason why the Cowboys are worth as much as they are, because AT&T Stadium is incredible. And then they've got the Star at Frisco, which I've never been to. I've been to AT&T, but I've not been to the Star at Frisco, but it looks absolutely incredible. And they make so much money from the Star at Frisco. The Bears would have this whole entertainment complex at Arlington Heights, but infrastructure needs to happen. Tax issues need to be figured out. And how that has not been done is as much the Illinois legislators' fault as it is the Chicago Bears. I think that Indiana is a play. I think it is a maneuver to force the state of Illinois to get things done for the stadium at Arlington Heights. I hope that's the case. I would rather they were still in Illinois. And also Arlington Heights is a nicer place than Hammond, Indiana, which is like an industrial wasteland. Now, I can remember back in the 90s, the Bears threatening to move to Gary, Indiana, which is further along than Hammond, but again, still part of Chicagoland. Most famous for the fact it's where Michael Jackson's from, but it's on the edge of Chicagoland, further away than Hammond. And I was a kid thinking, what? Like the Bears in Gary? I had no idea where Gary was, but the idea of like Gary, what all is this? So it could be worse. The dream would be they stay on the lakefront in Chicago in a much better stadium with a whole entertainment complex around it. But it can't happen. There's some of the most expensive real estate in America. You can't do it there. It's just not the case. It's a great place to kind of be, but it's not a great place to make money from a stadium. You know, you've got museums there, you've got an aquarium there. It's not set up for all that sort of stuff, like everything the Patriots have put around their stadium that has made them a lot of money.
Yeah, I think the lake.
Yeah, go on.
I was going to say, I think the lakefront area, I think it's all protected area, isn't it, for development? So you've just got what you've got there down at the lakefront.
Yeah, and the stadium is not big enough. It was a little bit dated when it was built. I mean, even the saga of redoing Soldier Field at that point, at the end of the 01 season, was botched because they wanted to build within the confines of the original Soldier Field with the Roman colonnades, and it was a protected listed building. So it's like, yeah, you can redevelop it as long as the exterior stays the same, which massively limited the size of the stadium. They couldn't expand outwards. They could only go up. So they went up, and then they were told, do you know what? Because it now looks like a spaceship has landed in the old stadium, you ruined everything around the colonnades. So it's no longer a protected site anymore. So it's like, they could have just accidentally bulldozed all. I mean, people would have been up in arms, but they could have accidentally bulldozed all that and just got on with it, because in the end, it lost its protection, which is a shame. Yeah. They can't stay at Soldier Field, and it kills me, because when you are there at a game at Soldier Field, and even though the stadium is not the best in terms of facilities, especially if you're like in an executive box, if you're just there in the stadium and you're there on a clear autumn day and you see the skyline, and one of the prettiest skylines in America, probably the second prettiest after some of the views you get of New York. It's glorious. And you think of all these teams who move out to the suburbs, or they're in a dome, or they're kind of in the middle of nowhere, with like no disrespect to like, say, Buffalo, Green Bay, because those are very different sorts of cities. You've got this incredible view that whatever happens, the Bears are not going to have. And I'm going to be sad to not be able to sit in my seat at Soldier Field and see all of Chicago. And you just feel like I am here, right here in Chicago. And I don't know where else I could be. I wish I could say to you with confidence, yeah, it's going to be Arlington Heights. They have played a blinder here, because I just think so many mistakes have been made. So many things have been taken for granted. If the Bears are in Hammond, then I'll go to Hammond. But I'm going to do it with a heavy heart. I would rather go to Arlington Heights and just stay in the state, even though it's all still Chicagoland.
Yeah, and he said again, strange. You see, if you're a fan of American sports, this concept of teams moving and things like that, you know, whether across cities or states, we're used to it, but we just don't have it in UK sports. You know, that last case, wasn't it? Was Wimbledon MK Dons, and that must be knocking on best part of 20 years ago now. It's just so.
But you do have situations where like English football teams have had a stadium built like in the inner city, because that's just how like stadiums would have been built at that time, and it's surrounded by terraced housing. You know, you've got that classic kind of thing of like you come out of an old turnstile and you're 10 feet away from someone's front door, and then moving to like a retail park in effect somewhere. But obviously our cities are not as big. They are not as spread out. It is not quite the same. So I guess that's the nearest thing, rather than say, you know, the Colts moving or the Browns moving to Baltimore and all that sort of stuff. But it's usually if an English football team is moving their stadium, it's not moving it as far away as this is happening. But it's as close to Soldier Field as the Cowboys' current stadium is to their first stadium in Dallas, and it's a hell of a lot closer than Levi's Stadium is to Candlestick Park in San Francisco. So there are lots of teams that don't quite actually play where they are. I mean, the Raiders don't actually play in Las Vegas. The Miami Dolphins technically don't play in Miami. Obviously, we know the Jets and Giants don't even play in the state of New York. But there's just something that would really take a bit of the romance away if this happens.
And I know that we'll hear this story will just rumble on through the season as it goes through the state governments, the legislators, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of updates throughout. Let's get back to the team and the roster, I suppose. We've talked a little bit around some of the kind of the ins and outs, I suppose, from free agency. We've talked about Kobe Bryant. We've talked about the players from the secondary that have gone, like Nashawn Wright, Kevin Byard. Anybody else you think who's come in? There was Devin Bushin and Neville Gallimore has come in as well. Any others that you think are going to potentially make a big impact, Ben?
No. It has been, I know, I wish I could just say, do you know who I think is going to make a huge impact? I don't think so. I mean, Kobe Bryant is the one of those, and I feel good about Devin Bush, but I don't feel that Devin Bush is really much of an upgrade over Tremaine Edmonds, frankly. And I probably would have preferred to keep Tremaine Edmonds. And this is my issue with, I get why they have changed pieces out, but I'm not in. And some of them it's financial reasons. I don't feel that the pieces they brought in are necessary true upgrades. Really, it's only Kobe Bryant. I feel yes. The rest are like I can take them or leave them.
Yeah, it feels like there's just some flies like Jedrick Willis is interesting. He's had some injury problems with the Browns, and he feels he's just trying to find a home. Doesn't sound like he's particularly making many friends in Chicago early on from how it's going. So, but maybe some depth for left tackle. And then from a draft perspective, we talked about sort of the headline one, Steineman, and we've talked about Aaron Jones as well as a long-term potential replacement from Dalman. Malik Muhammad, I think, is an interesting one. Cornerback. Again, to go in that, because it feels like there's going to be opportunities there for a lot of snaps and game time just because of the number of people that you left. Again, is he someone you see that could be a difference maker for the Bears with the opportunities that are available?
Yes. Oh yeah. I'm excited by him. The more I see of him, I'm more excited now than I was pre-draft. I'll be honest. Mm-hmm. I just think with the way that this secondary is being put together, he's long, he's physical, he's competitive. He's the sort of cornerback that the team has valued in recent years. So I think 4th round pick for him is good, So apart from Thieneman, he's the guy, and it just shows that there's this focus on the secondary. But my God, what we don't see there is an edge rusher, which I know I keep banging on about, but I'm going to be banging on about it all the way through the season when quarterbacks have so much time when they're playing the Bears. So Thieneman and Muhammad are going to have to be on their A game to stop all those long completions that were happening last season.
Yeah, feels like it's going to be the key, isn't it? To just being able to, because I suppose you can't live in those crazy games, right? It's funny. I mean, I'd love if the Bears had 17 of those crazy games again. That'd be great. But you can't live in those. You can't have a whole season in those and kind of exercise and have elements of control in periods of games. It's just tough to live and die that way. And a more stout secondary would certainly help. And let's start having a look at then some of the markets. Then we'll go through this with all 4 NFC North teams, but we'll start with the Bears for now with Ben. 9.5 wins is the line with Vegas. They reckon the Bears are in that 9-10 win territory for 2026. Where do you think the Bears can get to then in terms of a record, Ben, for the season?
I think, again, this is a 10 or 11 win team. The NFC North is just absolutely brutal. I actually think they've got the talent to win more games than that, but they're in the wrong division to do it. Even the Vikings, I feel, have got a good shot of winning that division, and the Vikings are the worst team in that division. I think the Lions are the best team in that division, and you're not going to get 3 teams winning 11 games. It's just not going to happen. Either the Bears, Packers, or Lions are going to have a disastrous season and miss the playoffs, I think, because they're going to take wins off each other. But I'm taking the over there on 9.5. I like that line. I like it a lot.
Yeah, it feels like when you look at kind of the split and the schedule, feels like to get to that double-digit win territory. I think it's got to be front-loaded. The last 4 games seem brutal. The run at the end at Buffalo, Packers, Lions, both at home though, and at Vikings. That just seems like a very, very sort of real tough way to finish. And
yeah,
with the 6 division games, it is just tough full stop. But it feels like maybe a little bit earlier on, that's where there's the chance to kind of collate and start stacking some of those wins to get the momentum going.
Yeah, I think that's it. And you know, I'm not a big fan of the fact that the NFL schedule makers really seem to want to have, and I get it, there are obvious reasons for doing it, but I don't love having backloading a load of divisional games to the end of the season. I would prefer they were spread out. I think it just makes the season more interesting. I understand the idea of like, well, the division's up for grabs because there's so many permutations because they're playing each other, and it adds to a certain level of excitement. But I prefer it spread out. I think the season has a nicer kind of flow and structure rather than, okay, well, we're waiting for divisional games.
Yeah, and I don't think it was last year. It might have been the year before. And I think it was the Bears specifically. They didn't have a division game until like week 11 or something. It was week 11. And then they had the Lions. They had the Lions early, and then it was a long gap. Yeah, and then you're just playing like 5 of the last 7 or 5 of the last 6 of division games.
Yeah, Lions and Vikings relatively early, and then months and months, and then play them all at the end. That was it. Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to be again another enthralling division. I think it's just so close between the teams. They're all just really, really solid teams. Even like say the gap between worst and first doesn't seem that much, and that's just kind of the standard of where we're at with the NFC North. And you can get even money for over 9.5 wins, just a shade under 10 to 13 for under 9.5. Make the playoffs the same, even money if you get to 10. If you guys get to 10 wins, it'd be a wild turn of events if they didn't make the playoffs. So same odds for making the playoffs as to the over-under. Division, just over 3-1 to win the division. How confident are you that they can repeat?
I'm not that confident, even though I think they're going to be better next season. I think, in effect, the Lions took a year off. The Lions had some issues last season that I don't expect them to have in 2026. I'm not convinced the Packers will be as good as they were last season. I think they had their issues last year. I think the Lions are the clear class of this division. And if they put together what they should do, I think that is their division to lose. I think basically the Bears just kind of borrowed it for a season. But going forward, I think you could have a four-way battle. But I'm not going to take that. I'm not going to take that division. I think that's Detroit. I wouldn't take any of those. I'll be honest.
14-1 to win the NFC, and 25-1 to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I don't see it. I think there are too many good teams in their way. Are they good enough? Are they good enough? Yes, this is a team good enough to win a division, good enough to win the conference, and yes, good enough to win a Super Bowl. I do believe that. However, they've got to get past the Lions and the Packers just to get into the playoffs. And then the NFC West is just wild. God, I feel sorry for the Cardinals. Jesus Christ. To be the Cardinals in that division with 3 legitimate Super Bowl contenders. The Rams and Seahawks, I think, are going to be better than they were last season. So to me, it's difficult to look at it and think beyond the NFC North that the Bears could win something. Can I see them winning the division? Yes. Can I see them lifting the George Halas Trophy to win the conference? No. Can I see them lifting the Vince Lombardi Trophy in the Super Bowl? Double no. But it's not impossible, is it? It's not impossible.
It's not. No, you talk yourself into it now. No, yeah, it's certainly not impossible. And who knows? And like I say, it just feels like, again, a year to just continue building the momentum, I think, of, and that's probably just the continuation of the upward trajectory. What would make for you then? What would make a successful season for the Chicago Bears this year, Ben?
11 wins again and reaching the divisional playoffs again. I think just going as far as they did last season and showing, okay, look, we can sustain this. I don't even think they have to do better. I don't think it's right. It's 12 wins. and it's you've got to get to the conference championship game. We see all the time a team sort of come out of nowhere, and really the Bears did come out of nowhere, but not if you'd kind of done your research and you looked at the way that Ben Johnson creates his offenses and what Dennis Allen can do as a DC. But they did obviously overachieve. If the Bears do that again, it's no longer overachieving. That's the bar. So 11 wins, even if they don't win the division, 11 wins and get to the divisional playoff, I will feel like, okay, this is settled now. This is a team built for the long haul.
Excellent. Ben, thank you ever so much for joining us. We really do appreciate your time coming on. Go follow Ben at Tweets from Ben. Go buy the book. It's in the description. Go buy it now. It's glorious, isn't it? When you see it on the screen. Go buy it now. The link's in the bio. Ben, where else can the viewers catch you? Where else are you going to be over the off season and when the season starts?
Keep listening to the Nat Coombs Show, where we will be previewing the season coming up. We'll be getting into all sorts of crazy shenanigans. We are dragged away from sport perhaps too often. College days as well, which soon will be coming back on a weekly basis. We did have a little off-season hiatus because it was a little bit quiet in college football, and we decided let's take a step back. But that is now kind of ramping up again. The most recent episode looking at the draft eligible quarterbacks that you all need to know in college football. If you're not watching college football already, you should be. It's all there on DAZN. I'm not being paid to plug it on DAZN, but it's great having that big buffet of college football. And I encourage any of you to do it. Was all free last season. You know, you could access all of it for free. I don't know if that'll be the case this season, but if it isn't free, there might be a free trial or something. Give it a go if you don't watch college football, because you'll probably fall in love with it. So there's that, and just other little projects that are kind of on the side that will soon hopefully come to fruition. And what I should say is I am involved in something where I'm probably not going to be appearing very often. Maybe I'll do it occasionally. It's a time issue, but I have put together a team of people who are making a Bears podcast, and there is a new Bears website. We have a team of people who are going to be writing for that. We have a team of people who are going to make this podcast, which is called BTW, Bears Talk Worldwide. Already had an interview with Peanut Tillman, which is great. It's a lot of people who are kind of prominent in the UK Bears community. We're not going to just be kind of UK focused. We want it to be that if you are outside America and you love the Bears, then this is a home for you. That's probably going to get the first episode. We are not trying to rush this. I've been working on it for months, probably in July. So if you're a Bears fan, follow me on Twitter, because once that is coming into view, I will be telling you how you can get involved. Yeah, BTW, Bears Talk Worldwide, coming soon.
Excellent. I'll follow at Tweets from Ben, and you'll get all the information you need for BTW. Very exciting. Cannot wait to hear the Peanut Tillman interview as well. That'll be so much fun. Ben, awesome. Thanks for coming on again. We do appreciate your time. And hopefully we'll have you on during the season. But enjoy the rest of your off season and have a cracking time when the season does begin.
Great. I'll speak to you soon.
Cheers to Ben there again. Make sure you go buy the book. The link. I think we've done about 10 promos for the book, but the link to the Amazon page for Ben's book, the episode description. Go buy it. It's a great read. Follow Ben at Tweets from Ben on X. Heard all about the Chicago Bears content that's going to be coming that he's a part of, plus Nat Coombs Show, College Daze Podcast, and everywhere else you can catch Ben. So thanks again. Let's move on to the Detroit Lions. It's been a wild couple of weeks, especially for the Detroit Lions. But before we get into that, it's just kind of the recap of their 2025 season. Disappointing one for the Lions. Ended up going 8-9 after being the 1 seed 12 months prior. Finished bottom of the table in the NFC North. First time they missed the playoffs since 2022. And they did have the 4th ranked scoring offense, 22nd ranked scoring defense. And that in itself just tells a bit of the story of kind of what went on with the Lions. Yeah, how would you kind of describe the 25 season for the Lions?
I mean, I think that tells its own story to a degree. 4th on offense, 22nd on defense. A bit of a repeat of the year before when, I mean, obviously they ended up having a better season, but it was defensive injuries that just let them down again. And, it kind of went the same way again down the stretch there. Lost 3 of the final 5. Just kind of got away from them towards the end there. They did also have a change at OC midway through the season where Dan Campbell took over play calling and kind of went back to classic Detroit football. But yeah, I think a frustrating year, and it's really telling with the Lions and what Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes have achieved that it's the first year they haven't made the playoffs since 2022, and an 8-9 record is like, bloody hell, that was a really bad season for the Lions. Like, 10, 12 years ago, they'd have been ripping your hand off for 8-9. So, mainly because they've had an extra game out of nowhere. But yeah, I don't think it's crisis time. And I think, one thing we'll get to as we talk the record coming for 2026 is you'd rather have a 4th place schedule than a 1st place schedule. So, could be a benefit in the long run for the Lions in 2026, certainly.
Yeah. Does this feel like a bit of a crossroad season for this kind of Dan Campbell project? Like, so how much further can it go? Joe, what do you think in terms of kind of taking them from that moment and how low, sounds terrible, doesn't it? But how lowly the Lions were when he came in? We all remember that kind of that first press conference to where they've taken to now. Does this feel like a key moment in which direction it's going to go for the Lions in the future?
Yeah, I think obviously we'll get on to what's happened with the changes and the coordinators done, but obviously he had 2 fairly set coordinators, especially on offense. The Ben Johnson we did in the Bears, and it is always hard to replace that. There's always that monkey on his back where, even though they beat the Bears twice last year, there's always that, are they, because Ben Johnson left, was he really the guy who had the magic and whatnot? So I think it's tricky because they're in a hard division in a hard conference, so they're going to have to produce and get back to that. I think if they just make the playoffs, I think Dan Campbell will be fine. I think what he's done for Detroit, we do forget about the years they had when they had all these, they had the star quarterback Stafford, they had Calvin Johnson, and they didn't really do too much. They felt like there was always in the middle. So I think unless they absolutely tank, I think Dan Campbell will be safe, but he's probably got a couple of years more just with what he's brought them. But they do need to step up because they're starting to pay their own players, and they're starting to, a lot of the good drafts that they're having to start paying these players. So that's when the roster gets worse. So this way needs to show how good of a coach he is and be able to build up teams rather than having just superstars across the board.
Excellent. Well, let's get into the headlines then for the Lions, the 4 key ones. Pets in Zoo, Lions unleash their new OC. After suffering a Ben Johnson hangover, Lions fire John Morton and replace him with Drew Petzing. Can the former Cardinals OC keep this offense roaring? Yeah, what are your thoughts? What are you expecting to see them from the new OC then compared to kind of the challenges they had at times last year?
Yeah, I think they'll probably stick to a similar kind of ethos as they've had. Obviously, Ben Johnson isn't coming back anytime soon, but I think you look at what they did, Petzing did in Arizona, certainly last year, and they aired the ball out a ton. So I think that's going to be, the heart of the offense again. Jared Goff throws the ball a lot. You've got J-Mo, you've got Amon-Ra, you've got Sam Laporta, and obviously Jahmyr Gibbs out of the backfield as well. All very, very plus level at minimum pass catchers. So I think that's going to be the heart of their offense. Once again, I think Jared Goff, don't want to say pencil him in for 4,500 yards, but I think you'll be certainly looking at the offense going through Jared Goff, and the offense kind of goes as Jared Goff goes. So I don't think there'll be a huge change in philosophy coming in. I think, again, that's what Petzing's familiar with, and it's what Dan Campbell wants. I don't think the Lions are going to be any less aggressive. And we've seen last year, if things aren't working out, Dan Campbell's happy to pick up the reins again and take over play calling at the very least. So, yeah, I don't view it as panic stations with a new OC. I think, we'll see much more of the same from Detroit.
Yeah, I'm curious if they go the other way as well, just because when you figure the Cardinals team, when Petzing was there the last few years, it was the run game, which when that was ticking with Connor being the mainstay, that's when they felt like the Cardinals were competitive. Obviously, last year they had to throw it out because all the running backs were getting injured and they really were just running to Trey McBride. Obviously, now he's got that superstar running back, which we'll chat about in a sec. So I wonder if they'll try and get to the ground game again. Because I think that's what helps Jared Goff is when you've got a good running game, be able to a lot of play action, a lot of getting, establish the run and then getting those easy throws out to Amon St. Brown and into JMO in terms of in space. That's where the Lions are looking good. It's when that doesn't work. That's when you worry about the Lions. We've talked about plenty of times, but especially that inside, that all line, if that can get got at, that's where Jared Goff starts having a struggle. So I don't know. It wasn't a high. I was like, oh wow, like this is gonna step up the Lions. Like even though they had a great year last year at offense, it felt like it wasn't the same kind of Lions. So we'll give him a chance, but hopefully it's a little bit better than what happened with the Cardinals.
So right, let's move on to the next one. Our second headline for the Lions. My screen's frozen, so apologies. Give him the ball. Sonic and Knuckles are no more as Montgomery departs. Pacheco joins the party, but will the Lions running back room be a shadow of itself, or will it be collecting gold rings? Sega Mega Drive, Sonic. You there. Good work, Joe. We've been sort of crying out, and we've had kind of like this split partnership, maybe selfishly for Jahmyr Gibbs fantasy football owners, for example. Very selfishly just screaming for him to just be the main man and not have this kind of series split with David Montgomery that we had, which certainly did work for the Lions and was productive. He is clearly very much the main man now. I don't know how much of that Montgomery role Pacheco will be able to completely fill, but certainly it feels like the onus is on Jahmyr Gibbs now to do that. How do you think that's going to play out in 2026, and how big of a factor is kind of that offensive line situation, because it still just doesn't feel settled yet?
Yeah, I mean, the line doesn't feel settled. I think, that is a question mark until we see it, be great. I don't know if it'll ever be as good as it was in prior years. Ultimately, the talent is what it is. But yeah, certainly for a fantasy perspective, I would love to get Jahmyr Gibbs in basically any draft. I think he's probably my 101 this year. So I'm all about it. In fact, when me and Joe done our way too early season bets, I had Jahmyr Gibbs as MVP as my big shout. I forget what the price was. I think it's like 150 or 200 to 1. Because obviously you have to be a quarterback to win the award. But if any non-quarterbacks go into, I think Gibbs has got as good a chance as any. I think he can easily. But he goes 1,000 and 1,000. I think, again, feed him till he pukes. He's just going to get a ton of the ball. So I like it. Pacheco is a shadow of David Montgomery, certainly. And I think, the only ring they're going to be concerned about is collecting one come February. So we'll see. But I think it's a great thing for Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he can handle the workload. And I think, looking at Fantasy 101 for me.
Yeah, and I think even when you looked at last year, there were so many games where I think they stopped doing the splitting, especially when the games mattered, because he was just so clear that Jahmyr Gibbs was on another level to Montgomery. The different series they were doing where it was like one series Gibbs was in, and because there would be a few where Gibbs would just have a huge run. It felt like Montgomery took a step down while Gibbs took a step up. So I think this is his year to certainly show that. And I also think he's going to be the 101 for, especially in my draft as well, just because I think they're just going to give him the ball loss. Because Pacheco, we always were waiting for him to do what he did at the beginning with the Chiefs, and it just never happened after that injury. And I just don't think it's just going to come back. They're just going to use him to give Gibbs a bit of a rest. So, hopefully Gibbs stays fit, and if he does, I think he's going to be right up there with contending for the best running back this year.
Excellent. Right, let's have a look then at off-season headline 3, and this is probably the story that's been in the news for the Lions. We're going to pull that at the end. Thanks, Joe. Another O-line tune-up in the Motor City. Another off-season of O-line changes with Ragnar retiring and Glasgow and Decker being released. Can Lake Michigan and others stabilize the position? Yeah, it feels like it's been a struggle with this O-line for a little bit now. Probably kind of the back end of 24 through last season, and now it's just not felt settled. It's been a lot of changes, and whether it's injury, age, release, people unhappy with their contract. It just feels a mess. Have they got the right pieces now to be able to kind of build what we know of the Lions is that kind of doing it in the trenches and that settled O-line and strong O-line is real key to making the whole game plan work.
Yeah, well, I think they've certainly put capital in there. So they've obviously drafted Blake Miller. This one, so he's going to move to right tackle. You're moving Penny Sewell, who was probably the premium right tackle of the league, now to left tackle. I feel like Sewell's good enough to do that. You got Tate Ratledge last year, which I don't think he had an amazing year, but, offensive linemen don't always hit the ground running, so you hope a year in the league he's better. And obviously they paid a decent amount of money for Cade Mays, a centre as well. So, they put the money where they needed to put it in and draft capital. You just hope it works out. There's not much more you can do. I know we were on draft night. There was a few tackles, it felt like, at that area where the Lions could go, and they went Blake Miller. So you just hope it works out. But, injuries and all that kind of stuff can derail any O-line. It feels like in the league there's not many which has got plenty of great players waiting in the wings. So I think they've done as much as they can this year. They just hope that the picks they actually made turn out well. And I feel like you need it with just a kind of offensive run because, like I mentioned, if Goff gets any pressure or it starts breaking down, especially in the middle, that's when you worry for the Lions that they're never going to reach the heights they did 2 years ago, 3 years ago, where it was like this was their time to get to that Super Bowl and make a good fist of it.
Excellent, right. And headline number 4, which is the one I started to talk through, but apologies. Hey, Arnold, why not use your football head? Lions released former first-round pick after the cornerback in the news for the wrong reasons. Is this another position of concern for Detroit? I think 8 felony charges, I think, is what Terry Arnold's facing. Seems quite strange because I'm also hearing when you look, again, not particularly any particular credible media sources, but other teams, I think at least 3 other teams have been in contact that suggests then if the Lions are in a position where they're so adamant, obviously they're getting rid of him because obviously he's extremely serious, the charges are, and he would likely be teams must be at the other end because you wouldn't go near him or touch him at all if there was, a likelihood that he's going to be convicted or that he's likely going to be guilty. So it seems quite a strange situation. But what are the Lions going to lose by kind of losing him in the minute? Because again, that feels like an area where they're a little bit short.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, talking strictly on the field, I don't think Terry Arnold has really worked out as we expected. Start from Dan Pizzuta over on Blue Sky. Terry Arnold's last among qualified cornerbacks in coverage DVOA by a wide margin out of 72. The 71st corner was close to 65, then 72. So I don't think really his play as we've seen it yet is going to be a huge miss. But as we've seen with Detroit over the years, like they seem to get stretched for depth every single year on defense. I mean, that seems coincidental, but like it keeps happening. So it's really frustrating on their end, I'm sure. And it's another body to fill. Like it's a player who had great potential coming into the league. I think we all kind of thought he would go earlier than he did in that draft. And, we thought Detroit had a bargain. He hasn't quite panned out, but just being another player that isn't going to, fulfill their potential, it obviously hurts. It stings. Even if he hasn't produced in the league yet, you'd like to see it happen. But, yeah, not quite as impactful as maybe it could have been on what we thought he might be. But, yeah, certainly a loss.
Yeah, I'm curious because you mentioned them 3 teams. Apparently it was his lawyer who said it, his defense lawyer. So we'll see how true that is and what happens. But, players have been re-signed for doing probably worse things and all that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if he gets away with it and is on another team somewhere. But like Baron said, it's not like your star cornerback, but it feels like, again, they've signed quite a few players in free agency throughout the years, and it's never really clicked, and that's always been the weakness. We looked at the rankings beforehand. The defense is always an issue, and just with some of the players they've lost on the front end, you really need your cornerback and your safety. And they've got like some superstars about there, but just the depth, it's not incredible. So again, it's another cause for concern why they're probably not in that upper echelon of NFC teams right now, because they have that weakness.
Excellent. Right. Let's have a look then at the ins and outs. So free agency, as we've talked about a couple of them, Cade Mays then on the interior of the O-line, this feels like a big one. It kind of feels like this is one that really does need to kind of hit from where they are. Just losing what they've lost on the interior of the O-line. Is Mays a capable candidate, do you think, of being able to kind of fill that void?
Yeah, I think he's been pretty strong in his career. I think he'll be a miss in Carolina. So, I think he's I can't expect him to hold everything together, but I think it's certainly an improvement on what they had last year. So, when they're trying to bring Ragnar out of retirement, or Glasgow, I always get the two mixed up. But yeah, try and drag him out of retirement, then realize he can't pass a medical. So, certainly an improvement on that.
And then just we've seen them again lose sort of players, and I think not only we talk about Terry Nard on defense, but people like Alex Anzalone, these have been big difference makers and big impactful players for the Lions. I mean, which of these do you think are going to be the biggest miss, and have they again got the replacements in that they need?
I think I would say the Alex Anzalone you mentioned. Just I feel like every time you're watching the Lions, it might just be because of the beautiful mane and just and how he looks. Like Van Ginkel, feel like the same guy. He's just always there on the camera. The camera knows where to find. So I think he's a big miss. I think some of the others like DJ Reader and Marcus Davenport, I feel like they were more name rather than production for the Lions. It felt like when they brought them in last year and a few years, it's like, oh wow, they've actually got that veteran to help with with that defensive line. Help Hutchinson, but they never I think if Reader was injured quite a lot and Davenport didn't quite make the impact they were expecting. So I think they're just losing veteran players and they're just hoping for these youngsters to step up. I think that's where they're at their cycle because we talk about some of the signings, but they just re-signed Jack Campbell for quite a decent amount of money. So if you're signing your own players, you're going to have to let some of these veterans go who demand higher pay because just the name value, but. Yeah, I think the Alex Anzalone one is going to be big, but the youngsters that have been drafted and have got to step up for them now.
Excellent. Speaking of youngsters, let's have a look at the draft. So we talked about Blake Miller. Anyone else that we're excited to sort of see from a Lions perspective here from who they took on draft night?
I feel like we talk about every offseason, but Derek Moore, is he going to be someone who can help out opposite Aiden Hutchinson? Feels like we're always looking for that contributor. Obviously, they had Mohammed last year. He's a Michigan kid, so at least he's going to be local. But yeah, it'd be nice to see obviously second round pick contribute early and often would be great. But yeah, none of the other names really get me anything excited, I will say. So hopefully it's just my ignorance, and hopefully they've hit on some picks again.
Excellent, right. I think Abney's one that I'm interested in, the fifth rounder. Cornerback again, we've talked about that kind of area. Arnold's gone missing. There's going to be more opportunities there in the secondary for snaps and
I was in the depth chat currently. He is the starting as the right cornerback, so he's a big year from him.
Yeah, could be. If you do get that and you do get those snaps from him, fifth round pick, he's Arizona State product. So yeah, very very interested to see if he can make the leap and sort of see. If that helps, lessen that blow from Terry and Arnold being nicked. Right, let's have a look then at the win totals. 10.5 wins for the Lions, over under 10.5. Guys, where have you got them?
I have them at 13-4, which I found like a lot. Truthfully, I thought I'd have them lower, but I like the schedule a lot. So, yeah, going through and picking every game, it ended up with 13 wins. So I will take the over. I thought I'd like them less than that, but yeah, that's why I ended up with them. Yeah.
So it's like 3-game difference, isn't it? So I suppose they get the benefit of playing the
NFC East, NFC East, yeah,
and the Giants. Well, you play the NFC East anyway, but yeah, and the Giants, I guess, yeah.
Yeah. So fourth place schedule combined with NFC South, AFC East. You've got a lot of teams that I think are worse than the Lions ultimately. So
excellent. Okay, cool. Joe, over under 10.5.
Yeah, just looking at the schedule now, I'm going to go over as well, just with the schedule they've got. I think obviously last year they lost twice to the Vikings and Packers, so you would hope they at least do better this year. And if they do, I think they could get 11 to 12 wins, just with, like you mentioned, play the AFC East. You've got the Bills, that's in week 2, so you get that out of the way, and then you've got the Dolphins and Jets. You should be we'll see what the Patriots like this year, but everything else seems fairly winnable. Probably all the games are winnable, except maybe that Buffalo one will be the tough one, but everything else are going to be in with a shout. So, yeah, I'm going to go over as well.
So, and we are also going to get the Detroit Lions making the trip to Munich. Is it Munich? Yes, they're playing in Germany. Playing the Lions. The Detroit Lions playing the Lions. Playing the Patriots at the Allianz Arena come November. Interesting one. Right, 23-20 to hit over 21-20. So they're right on that 10-11-9 according to the bookies. Heavily favoured to make the playoffs, 10-19 or 2-1 on. And you can get 6-4 for the Lions to not make the postseason again. Let's have a look then at the odds for the division. 3-2 to win the division. 3-2, 33-20, depending on who you bet with. 9-1 to be the NFC champions. And 18-1 to win Super Bowl 61. Anything there? Sort of, they are the favourites to win the division currently. Just ahead of the Packers, who are second favourites. But 9-1 for the NFC, 18-1 for the Super Bowl. Anything there tickling your fancy?
Truthfully, I'd rather bet the Super Bowl than the conference, I think, because I think this year the best teams might be in the NFC with the NFC West bar the Cardinals. Eagles are a good team. Cowboys are a good team. NFC South will send somebody. So, yeah, I don't think 18-1's a bad price. I don't know if I would take it literally on its own, though. I just think that defense might just be a little too far off to contend with those NFC West juggernauts. So, the 18-1 does appeal. I think it's a nice price based on what they've done the last few years, but I'm probably not taking it right now, truthfully.
Yeah, they're grouped to 18-1 with the Eagles, Niners, and Texans all 18-1 to win the Super Bowl. So it kind of feels about right, maybe where those teams are, and kind of feel like about on a par with each other. Right, Lions done. Packers next. 9-7-1, and what a glorious one it was. And that 40 tie against the Cowboys from 2025. Packers finished second in the NFC North, lost in the wildcard round to the Chicago Bears. It feels there's been a bit of a trend, really, kind of where the Packers have been in the last few years of just kind of, 9-10 wins in the playoffs and eliminated pretty quickly. 16th on offensive scoring, 11th on defensive scoring. Again, kind of how would you describe kind of the Packers 2025 season? We'll let Joe, you can go with this.
Yeah, when you look at how he started, they were 9-3-1, and they lost the last 5. So obviously not a great way to end. It felt like injuries caught up to them. It felt like the start of the year, Love was showing something, and then they had Micah Parsons, and this will be one of our headlines. But yeah, they seem to get quite a lot of injuries, which derailed their season. They have they're a weird team that even the 9-3-1 where they started, their 3 losses were Browns, Panthers, and Eagles. So 2 of them. They probably should have won in some weird games. So they were just such an up and down team. But yeah, just that last 5 games, lose to Broncos, Bears, Ravens, Vikings, and the Bears again in the wildcard was very disappointing. But I do feel sorry for them. Just with all the injuries they did have, it was probably a bit too much for them to go further. But a typical, and again similar to how I expected this year, that they're just good enough to compete and be there and thereabouts. So I think it was a disappointing season, but just it felt like a typical Packers.
Excellent. Byron?
Yeah, I struggled with this last year. I thought the Packers were overrated. Then they traded for Mike Parsons, and I was like, oh, shoot, they're really going to be great. And they just never really were. Again, they had the moments earlier in the season, but I just found them so inconsistent. Like Joe saying, they lost to the Panthers, lost to the Browns. They drew or tied with the Cowboys, who, as much as we'd like to have been a great team last year, the defense was so poor that they just weren't. And then, obviously, they ended the season with 4 straight regular season losses, then immediately eliminated in the playoffs. I don't know what the Packers are. I don't know what they were last year. We'll get into 2026, but I kind of have the same kind of feeling of, I don't know. I don't know. They feel like a bit of an old school team trying to operate in 2026, and I just don't think it quite works, truthfully.
Do we feel like this is a big hot seat season for Matt LaFleur?
I do, because there was certainly issues at the end of last season of Are they going to extend him? He's gone into a contract year, and I think he did get an extension. I don't have the numbers up in front of me, but I think he got a 1-year extension. So his contract will end in 2027, I believe. Feel free to fact check me on that one. Like, I'm not 100% sure that I'm right, but I think that's right. And it just doesn't. It feels like we've come down to, and again, like LaFleur wants more power, and I don't know if the teams are willing to give it up. He's certainly done well in Green Bay, but it always feels like it's just kind of like not quite a team that fires on all cylinders. They do well, they get to 9 wins, and that's kind of feels like the ceiling. You know, they go 1-1 in the playoffs at best, and there just doesn't seem to be that like elite level upside that you get with some of the coaches in the league. So, yeah, I think there was some growing frustration at the end of last year, and I think that could roll into this season if things don't go well to start, certainly.
Yeah, it's just a multi-year extension, and I've not really seen it. I can't really see anything else about it. So that was from back in January. So you just go into the last year of his deal in 2026.
Yeah.
Didn't want him standing there in a lame duck situation. So I'm sure there's plenty of flexibility, and you know, if it doesn't go well, then they can get out of it. Right, let's have a look at the headlines for the Packers. Maximum Reed turn on investment. Packers decide to pay their 2 young wide receivers, with Watson getting a top 20 wide receiver deal. Is this too much given injury history? Is the Reed deal about right? I feel like we have this conversation about the Packers a lot. Like, we never know, or they don't seem to have the guy. Like, when you look at most other teams, they have a clear one, and then a supporting cast. Some have a clear 2. The Packers just seem to have like a mismatch. I can't even say it, but like a match of players who have slightly different profiles, and on any given moment, it could be any one of them that's the one. Do you feel like we move away from that now a little bit, the Packers, because of obviously a couple that have left? Obviously Dobbs went, Wicks has gone, and now kind of we're in a position where we've got sort of Watson, Golden, and Jaden Reed.
Yeah, I think, you know, we'll get into more of like who's left, but I think between Watson and Reed, they've both certainly flashed. I love Jaden Reed as a player. I'd love to see him get a full workload. I think what will be interesting to see him now in 2 wide receiver sets. Again, we'll talk Matthew Golden on the next headline as well. So I think individually, I don't mind paying them. And I think it's always hard because good players don't hit free agency. So, like, if you think they're good, I think you do just pay them and hope they don't keep getting injured. Christian Watson was great last year, 61 yards per game. Had some real highlight games as well where he really dominated. I think he had one against the Texans where you just didn't really see it coming. I think it was Malik Willis at quarterback as well. And he was exceptional. And if he can be one of the premier deep threats in the league and add a little bit to it, then I think, you know, you might look at it and you think, well, yeah, he's getting paid top 20 money and he's playing like a top 10 receiver. So if they can make that happen, then I think it makes sense. I think it makes sense to take the gamble anyway because they have lost receivers that we'll get to, and they need pass catchers. They didn't bring anyone else in, which I think is a risk, certainly, given certainly Watson's injury history. But yeah, we'll see. I'm excited to see if Reed gets more work, though. I've kind of touched on it. If he gets in 2 wide receiver sets, I think he's one who could be a great fantasy play. So, yeah, certainly a gamble, though.
Yeah, I'm curious as well because, like, Reed's, when you look at Watson's never got more than 620 yards in a year. Like, I know he was probably going to break that last year with his injuries, but that's 4 years now he's been in the league. He's not got higher than 620. You normally like, well, that's just a 3rd, 4th kind of wide receiver there. So to pay him that much money, I think he got 4 years. I think he can get up to 110. I think there's a lot of incentives. So I think they've built it right where they can probably release him after a year. The Reed one was a bit strange because he had another year on his contract for like $5 million, and they just decided, we'll just pay him a little bit early. But I think he could be the star because his first year got nearly 800, second year got that 850, and he only played 7 games. So if he can stay fit, play a full season, I think he can reach that 1,000-yard mark, but they just need to stay fit. That's just been the issue. And it's Jaden with the drops as well, wasn't it? Like, they just need to keep hold of some of these balls. But yeah, I think it's the right thing to do because they're in such a weird position, which we'll get onto as well, like how they haven't brought many people in because they're just in a weird time frame within their cycle as well.
Yeah, let's go on to the other wide receiver we've not mentioned too much in detail. Is everything golden at Lambeau? Packers move on from Dobbs and Wicks with no wide receiver replacement. This gives second-year wide receiver Matthew a golden opportunity to show what he can bring. It's another opportunity for me to share the stat that I love so much in the draft process with Matthew Golden and the company that he keeps. No first-round wide receiver. There'd only been 2 first-round wide receivers who hadn't hit 1,000 yards in college, in a season in college. They've been drafted before: Matthew Golden, Kadarius Toney, and Henry Ruggs. And based on how his rookie season went, with less than 30 catches and 300, less than 400 receiving yards, feels like Matthew Golden is well on his way to fitting in with those guys in various different ways. What do we need to see from Golden? What are the Packers hoping that they're going to get from Golden in 2026 that they didn't get last year?
I mean, I will say he shined in that playoff loss against the Bears. I think he went 5 for 84, I believe, and a touchdown. Yeah. So I wonder if it's not necessarily I don't think any of us liked the Matthew Golden pick at the time, but it is what it is. You can't revisit history and redo it. I just think if you're going to take a play like that, you have to get creative and get him involved more. A bit like that's kind of been my issue with Jaden Reed over the years with LaFleur as well. Like, he has a player that has an interesting skill set and just doesn't really utilize it. And it's like, is the GM and the head coach not talking here and saying like, hey, will you make use of Matthew Golden if we draft him here? If not, we'll just take, the best defensive player on the board. Or is that not happening? Because it just feels like LaFleur gets this player and then goes, well, I don't know what to do with him. I'm just going to feed Romeo Doubs instead. So the potential certainly there. Like I said, we've seen it against Chicago, 5 for 84 and a touchdown in a huge game. He's fed the ball a lot, and it worked out. If they're willing to do it, then I think there's a possibility that he certainly has a better career than Ruggs and Kadarius Toney. Low bar though that is, but I just struggle to have optimism. I've seen a lot of fantasy football creators, content creators talking about how they're in on Golden this year, and it just feels like it's like I don't say fool's golden, but like it is just like wish casting a little of like, well, I just think he'll do it. It's like, oh, why? It's like, well, someone's got to catch the ball. It's like, well, I'd like something stronger than that. It's like, why you think he's going to work out? I struggle to buy into it, I will say, ultimately.
So, right, let's move on to our third headline. The Comeback Kids. I delivered that terribly, sorry, Joe. Are the Packers ready to go with big stars, Parsons, Kraft, and Tom all having injury question marks heading into camp? Will Love hurt without them? Parsons, I think we know is going to miss probably at least the first month of the season from that knee injury, and it'd be wise probably to let him go longer than that, I think, coming off such a big injury. Tucker Kraft, who was having an incredible season, sadly went down. He's coming off a big injury. Tom as well. How do the Packers balance this? How do they navigate the way through the early part of the season without kind of 3 huge players for them?
I mean, best of luck is kind of my answer. Zach Tom, I talked about this a lot last year. I think he is one of the most underrated tackles in the NFL. I think he might, maybe not the best right tackle, but I think he's certainly in the top 5 there. And when he wasn't there, that line fell apart last year. And then, I mean, that's also coincided with Tucker Kraft not being there, who I think, we talk about Brock Bowers and Trey McBride, but I think alongside George Kittle, Tucker Kraft might be the best all-around tight end in the league. Because Bowers and McBride aren't the blockers that those 2 players are, who really can do it all. And obviously that massively impacts your offensive line as well, because Kraft isn't there to help, and he's also not there to help catch the ball. If all 3 of these players aren't fit to hit the ground running, I look at that roster and I think, I just don't know I don't say who you're beating, but like, I don't know how many teams I'm picking like them to, be favored in a big way over. Parsons is such an elite pass rusher, and we talk every year. It feels like Lucas Van Ness will hopefully step up, whether it's with Parsons being there or whether it's needing to because he's in his shadow. And I just don't really see it any of these years coming on. So I really think these 3 are so integral to how their season goes. If Parsons starts on PUP and misses the first 4 to 6 weeks of the season, I struggle to see how they're second favourites or how they, win the division if they don't have Micah Parsons for maybe half the season. And then he's got to, do you expect him to hit the ground running and, be the second best pass rusher in the NFL immediately? I think that's a huge ask. Not to say he can't do it because the man's, I was going to say one of one, but, one of a very small amount in the NFL who is a physical freak who has done nothing but excel, but we've never seen him come back from an ACL tear. So, hard to be fully trusting in that, I guess. So I really worry if any of these three aren't fit, and especially if more than one isn't. Yeah, I think it's a huge concern.
I would say the only good thing that they have going for them, the first 4 games against Vikings, Jets, Falcons, Bucks, before they play Bears. So if you have to choose 4 teams from their schedule, you might want to chuck Miami in there. But that's probably the easiest, you never know how the season goes, 4 games to start the year. So at least it's not just, you got the Lions and the Bears and, and the Rams within the first 4 weeks. And you're like, oh, we're starting off 1-3, 0-4 like that. Like you think, okay, if they can they've got good enough players to get to 3-1, maybe 2-2, maybe even 4-0. So just to help them get a, foundation for this season. So that's the only consideration. And then you just never know with injuries. It always feels like, they'll come back strong. And then we'll be sat here next offseason they've had a year under the belt. So this year is when took a craft really back after having a year from that injury, same as Parsons and stuff like that. So you never know how someone's just going to bounce back. So, you wish them the best, but they certainly need them just with what's happening to the team in general, which we'll talk about in the next headline. If we want to move to that.
Just a quick one before this. So talk about the injuries and the problems they've got. It was a mandatory mini camp finished last week. There were 17 Packers players that were part of kind of the injury designation or kind of out of the main consider, which at this point is about 20% of your roster. 11 of those 17 are projected starters or expected big contributors. Parsons, Benjamin St-Juste, Isaiah McDuffie, Warren Brinson, Devontae Wyatt, Javen Hargrave on defense, Aaron Banks, Zach Tom, Tucker Kraft, Luke Musgrave, and then Sky Moore on special teams as well. All people you're expecting to get production from and snaps from, and a lot of play. Just feels like a very, very difficult place to start your season from.
Yeah, and like you said, Sky Moore special teams with their wide receivers, he might be starting.
The injuries, Right, let's go then. We'll go to the 4th one, Joe. Thank you. Gunter Kunst sipping a cocktail on the bay. A lot of inactivity in Wisconsin during the off-season. Are the Cheeseheads worried about another mouldy season, or are the foundational pieces good enough to compete? And now, Byron, you can see why you wanted to really get to that 4th headline so quickly. Excellent. Is this part of the course for Green Bay? We don't necessarily see them be particularly flashy in free agency, do we usually, and things like that? Is this just what we'd expect to see, or will we expect them actually, there's more that needed to be done here, and we're expecting them to be a bit more active?
I think especially at pass catcher, I would have expected them, splash a bit more cheddar around and bring somebody in. They have lost Romeo Dobbs, who, was good for, what did Romeo Dobbs, 85 targets last year. Dontavian Wicks, 46 targets last year. They've both left with no replacements at all. I just find that so curious. And again, unless Sky Moore is going to suddenly turn into a wide receiver who gets 50 targets, which I really don't see happening. I find their offseason very, very peculiar. Maybe I'm wrong and they can turn it around, but I just think they just need bodies. At a certain point, we touched on Christian Watson's health. We touched on Matthew Golden's inability to get targets as a rookie. Jaden Reed doesn't play in 2 wide sets. Maybe the best thing happened to all 3 of them, and they are immovable from the lineup all season and took a crafted to ground running in August. It just like you're asking to roll a lot of 20s, a lot of 6s, you're asking to hit your jackpot every single one of them outcomes, and it just doesn't feel realistic to me. So, I don't want to be too blue on the Packers' chances, but I don't love it.
I feel like it's a roster that's very much like it's a Swiss cheese roster, I think we'd call it in a minute. There's plenty of holes in it. I will, in edit, put a little counter up for every one that that we hit there, Byron, during your Packers spiel there. Anything more to add, Joe? Have you got any contained cheese puns that you out?
No, not really. I just wanted to say, like, with the Packers, it was weird because, we come up with these headlines. And I think we're all struggling for the fourth headline and trying to figure, and that just says what their off-season is, and we'll go into the free agency, and they sound like 5 players. It's not even that they've not gone all out. They've just, done nothing with the depth as well. And I don't know if it's one of them, it's like, we've got these injuries to all these key players. Is this not... And I think they've got the cap space as well. It's not like a team what's got, was mounting in debt and having to release players and all this kind of stuff. Well, I wonder if it's more, do they think we've got all these big injuries, so this might not be our year? We've got we've got Parsons signed, we've got a lot of our players signed up. I think Kraft's the next big contract, which we've got to sort out. Let's just see how this year goes, hope for the best, and then it's the next year when we've got more of the money and spend big. That's just what I've got.
It'd be interesting to see if they do unearth some gems through training camp. Is it better late than never?
Fucking hell. Right, move on. Yeah, you mentioned Joe, there's 5 signings. I suppose Tyrod Taylor for Malik Willis, I suppose, is one of them. So you got that. They did trade for Zaire Franklin, I guess, from the Colts. Any of them that, again, are any of these going to be difference makers, do you think, for the Packers?
We haven't got on there leaving here as well with Sean Gary, because Javon Hargrave seems like a good addition, but he is just going to replace with Sean Gary ultimately. So I think that's kind of a wash there. Losing Elgin Jenkins in your line, Quay Walker, linebacker as well. I think they've lost more than they've gained ultimately. So yeah, don't love the business, truthfully. Nothing stands out as oh wow, at least they got this guy in. It feels like kind of patching the holes that they've already created.
Yeah, it was more like the guys leaving. That was more of a. It was like, okay, I've got to put Tyrod Taylor on there. It's it's not great with Love's injury history that you're going to be relying on Tyrod instead of Malik Willis. But we probably would have said that when Malik Willis signed. But yeah, it was definitely when I'm doing the leaving of the Packers. It was like, oh, there's some big players who have left, and trying to figure out who to put on there was the more trickier. And I think like you said, the Quay Walker, the Zaire Franklin. I'll probably take Quay Walker, but he's got a higher contract and whatnot. So I just don't think they've done enough with how much they've lost and just relying on the foundation pieces we've talked about all coming back from injury. So I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on Jordan Love to, one, stay fit and have that kind of season where he sustains his high level of play and not have such this up and down season, which I feel like he has the last few years.
Excellent. Right, let's go to the draft. No first round pick because they sent that to Dallas for as part of the Micah Parsons deal. 6 players, 1 a kicker. Again, it feels that the defense has been a bit of a focus. I think 4 of the 6 picks there, 2 corners, a defensive tackle, and a pass rusher. He still feels they really, really do need a supplemental pass rush outside of Parsons. We talked about it a lot, and we certainly did when we was in Dallas around. Parsons garners so much attention. You need other people to take advantage of the one-on-ones they get. Do we feel like they've got that? Have they got that anywhere here in the draft?
I know Dennis Sutton was pretty highly rated. I was surprised he went as late as 120. Not a player I know a huge amount, other than that he did have some hype around him. So they'll certainly hope to get that contribution there. And I think, again, Brandon Cisse was another one of those, there was that bunch of corners who could go at the end of the first, and he fell all the way to 52. So I think they'll like the value there. We shall see, obviously, how much he ends up contributing as a rookie. But I think they've done well to get those 2 at what seemed like value, certainly in the draft process. But I'm not going to profess to knowing too much about them as players. I just remember them being touted as values.
Well, I think I would say the big pick is Smack in round 6 as their kicker going into the year. I feel like they've had up and down, I would say, kickers the last few years. Coming from a franchise who's drafted a kicker or 2 and it going terribly wrong, you are putting a lot on a youngster being coming in from the draft, going straight into being a kicker in a division where it feels like a lot of the games, especially in division, it might come down to it. So that's a big pick in terms of they couldn't just pick anyone for free agency that chose a draft pick, but we'll see how he does. I don't know if you've got any knowledge or anything about Smack, Paul, the kicker?
No, my knowledge of Trey Smack isn't great, apart from obviously he's got an absolutely fantastic name. Yeah, there you go. 18 of 22 for Florida last year. That's as much as you get in. 5 and 6 from 50 plus. But they do need certainly some consistency. They were rolling out Brandon McManus weren't they, for the last year or so. So certainly things probably do need to change from that perspective and try and get settled. And yeah, maybe Trey Smack is the answer. The other one, Dennis Sutton's interesting because by getting that pass rush, he had 8.5 sacks for Penn State last year. So can he translate that again? And that's where they've had quite a dominant front, and he's been kind of a second guy maybe. So maybe he gets the opportunity to kind of get those similar scenarios for playing for the Packers. That's it. From the draft, let's go to the win total. 9.5 wins for the Packers, over under 9.5. 10 to 13 to hit the over, even money to hit the under. Where do you have the Green Bay Packers?
This is one of the ones I feel boldest about. I have the Packers 7 and 10, which is bold because I don't think LaFleur's ever had a season that bad. But yeah, that's where I have them finishing up.
Joe?
I have them at 9 wins, actually, so I'm going to go under as well at that evens price, 9 wins. I think just with the injuries coming off, I did say the schedule seems fairly easy to begin with, but I feel like they might go like 2 and 2 there, and then you're struggling to catch up with some of the games they've got down the stretch. So, I'm going to go 9 wins, and the Packers being on the edge of the playoff picture.
Yeah, I think they'll be there or thereabouts. There and thereabouts on a wild card spot, I think. And I think 9 or 10 probably because, again, Matt LaFleur is a really, really good coach and he will carry some of this. And we've seen him do it multiple times now. It's not a fluke when it happens. He might carry a less than desirable looking team to a decent record. So, yeah, I kind of got them that 8 to 10 win territory on the fringes of a wild card spot for the Packers. For me, to make the playoffs, 5 to 7 they're odds on to make the playoffs, even with a 9.5 win total. 5 to 7, and you can get just over even money, 11 to 10 for them to miss out on the postseason. Then to win the division, the second favourites 23 to 10, so just over 2 to 1, 10 to 1 to win the NFC, and 20 to 1 to win Super Bowl 61. The division's interesting. I just think they're going to just be a little bit short, but I don't think they're going to be a million miles away, even though they might have as bad a team as they've had for the last kind of 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, at 7 and 10, I won't be backing them for any of these, obviously. Sure, if that isn't obvious enough, I guess.
Yeah, I think you said it a couple of times. I think they are just falling into that kind of that Steelers territory, where they're just going to kind of be on the periphery. Some years going to be in the mix to win the division without being particularly great. Always going to be a chance at that wild card spot. They just never get into that position where you're going to blow it up and start again because they're just never that bad. I think that's kind of where we're getting to with the Packers now.
I think the only good thing is they've got a quarterback, which it feels like the Steelers have not had for the last quite a few years. So, yeah,
for sure. Excellent. Right. Minnesota Vikings. 9 and 8. Season for the Vikings in 2025, good enough for third in the division. Missed the playoffs. We're 26 on offense. I think that's kind of quarterback is where the problems were. 26 on scoring offense, 7th on scoring defense. Brian Flores' defense still had a really good year. Yeah, how would you kind of describe it? It just felt like a chaos season in Minnesota last year.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to describe it. You mentioned the quarterback there. You had obviously J.J. McCarthy, Carson Wentz, Max Brosnan. Remember the Seattle game? I think he started another game as well, but that Seattle one was his first one, and boy, was that a tough place to have a undrafted or very late round drafted rookie make his debut. It was really rough. It felt like nothing really went right, but J.J. McCarthy still had a winning record last year, 6 and 4. Carson Wentz went 2 and 3 as a starter. Max Brosnan, I think, went 1 and 1 as a starter. And you think, with how bad the quarterback play was last year, they still didn't finish bottom of the division. They still finished with a winning record. I think that's pretty remarkable. all things considered, because through a lot of the season, I think we sat every week and went like, man, this Vikings team is just rough. I can't remember where them in power rankings, but I think they're often around like 21-ish, ahead of that like really bad class. But like every week, we just didn't feel confident they were going to win a game. And then they'd kind of just trot out, Aaron Jones missed a lot of the season. They'll just like trot out these wins, not quite out of nowhere, but like, between Brian Flores playing crazy defense and Van Ginkel having a great season, they will pull these wins out. So very weird season, certainly. I don't think they got close to having an answer as what their quarterback future in-house certainly was. So, yeah, I think to get to 9-8 and third in the division, I think is a success. But, yeah, certainly a wild season for the Vikings.
Yeah, it was one of them weird ones where when I was doing these slides, I was like, oh, yeah, they went like, 5-12, and so I was like, oh, they were 9-8. They were, but they won the last 5 games, which certainly helps because they were 4-8 when they lost to that Seahawks. And they lost to 26, and it felt like that was the season ended. But they won the last 5 games, and I think that just says a lot about Kevin O'Connell. Would mention that because there was like some rumors he might be leaving as well, and he would have been the number 1 hire for anyone just because how well he's done with this Vikings team. And yeah, they had a weird year, like coming in with a lot of hope, just with how the season before went when none of us had any hope, and they made it to the playoffs and nearly got the number 1 seed. Sam Darnold, obviously they released him and he goes to see Seattle, and what happens there. So yes, I think it was disappointing in that sense, just with some of the players they've got, how well that defense has done. They just, like you mentioned, just how bad the QB room went last year in terms of their hopes and dreams. And I think it's the same again this year. It's like, if they can figure that out, then they'll be, as I said, one of them teams where they're in the mix to make the playoffs and do something in there. But if it doesn't work out, they could also be languishing like mid-range, like we mentioned about the Packers, where they're just in that awkward spot, like the Steelers, where the coach is good enough, the defense is good enough, but they're just not got the quarterback to produce and actually be competitive when it comes to real meaningful playoff games.
I think one of the things I found most interesting, like just a stat that stood out last year, was third down conversion rate. Even more telling than the actual points per game. On defense, they were 4th best in the league. On offense, they were 32nd. And like, I think that just like tells you the huge disparity between how well the defense performed versus how well the offense didn't perform, I guess. 32 out of 32 in a league with the Jets, the Titans, the Raiders of last year is telling with a coach that we think is as great as Kevin O'Connell. Well, I certainly think Kevin O'Connell's a really good coach. So to get 32 on third down conversion rate and still get a 9-8 record, I think is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, that's right. Let's get into the headlines for the Minnesota Vikings. More the Murray in the quarterback room. Mo Murray, mo problems for young QB. JJ has new competition as former number 1 overall pick Kyler joins for vet minimum. Will Murray be mint or come up short? Are you piling them in the one little excellent work? Yeah, Kyler is a Minnesota Viking. Feels a good fit. Feels an opportunity for him to have a fresh start. I think there's plenty left in Kyler. How do you see the fit with the Vikings, and what does it mean for JJ McCarthy?
Well, I mean, JJ McCarthy's certainly in a real competition. I think you look at his quality of play last year, he had some ups, obviously. He was the NFC Offensive Player of the Year week 1, I believe, out of nowhere for having 2 good drives. And he just never really got set. In terms of EPA per play, he was pretty poor. I was just trying to bring up the actual number, sorry. But I remember he was pretty bad. Certainly, yeah, of any quarterback who threw past last year, so that's not all starters, he was 53rd of 63 in terms of EPA versus average starter, and Kyler Murray was 13th. So that doesn't tell you everything, but we've seen highs from Kyler Murray that we haven't seen from JJ McCarthy. JJ McCarthy's played a lot less football, but from coming out, Kyler Murray was good immediately. He's had downturns as well, but I would be, if I'm a Vikings fan or if I'm a person in the Vikings office, I am hoping and praying that Kyler Murray is the answer, because I don't think it's JJ McCarthy. I'm always loath to write players off really early in the career. I don't want to say JJ McCarthy can't be an NFL starter, but I know Kyler Murray can be, and I'm not saying he's a top 10 quarterback in the league by any means, but I know he can command an offense. I know he can run a competent offense. So if I'm Justin Jefferson, if I'm Jordan Addison, Hawkinson, etc., I'm also saying, let's, give Kyler I don't say a leg up here because he's a little lad, but I just really hope it's Kyler Murray for the good of that offense. Like we said, 32nd on third down conversion last year, 26th on scoring. I think Kyler Murray instantly elevates those numbers. He's a running threat. I just think, I was going to say all being equal, you give it Kyler on the upside, but I struggle to see that they'll be equal through training camp. I think Kyler Murray must take this job.
Yeah, Joe, so you've spent plenty of time watching Kyler being in the NFC West. How do you think this does this feel like a good fit for you, Kyler, going to the Vikings?
Yeah, I think he's probably got his best head coach, offensive guru he's had. So if Kevin O'Connell has shown he's improved a lot of quarterbacks who have been thrown to the wayside's career. So if Murray's going to do it somewhere, it feels like this is his last opportunity to demand being the number one quarterback at the start. Because it feels like he's got that position that JJ is going to sit behind, which he's just never felt ready in any of the games. He just felt like he was, they've just given a kid an opportunity to play quarterback a lot of times. Yes, I think with the talent he's got around him, he should do good. That offensive line is one of them where it feels like it could be boom or bust. If Derrishaw can stay fit, he can be like a top 5 left tackle, but the problem is he can't stay fit. Donovan Jackson, who they drafted last year, you hope that he takes a step. And then it's more the right side, the Will Fries and Brian O'Neill is where you do worry in terms of offensive linemen. So it depends on that, because what you don't want to see, what Murray does quite a lot, is scramble a bit too much. He gets out of the pocket way too quickly. So Kevin O'Connell can get him to stay in the pocket and do what he needs to do, because will be one of the headlines just with the wide receivers he's got, his tight ends and his running game's decent. He's got enough around him to actually do something this year. And if the defense can replicate what they've been doing the last few years, that's not always, you can't guarantee that. But with Flores there, he's shown year in, year out, is able to scheme up and keep them in games. So you just need someone who doesn't just give the game away, which you felt last year when they had JJ McCarthy, Carson Wentz, and Brosma. They were giving games away. Like, it's fair enough if the other team is just better and winning the game, but it felt the Vikings were losing on themselves and they're going 9-8. So if they can keep that level of consistency, I wouldn't be surprised if this is similar to what Sam Darnold happened, because when we were sat here with Sam Darnold starting, we're like, oh, wow, this is going to be a rough year. This is going to be terrible. And look where they got. I think that could be a kind of same year for Kyler Murray, but it is on Kyler Murray, because I think if he goes to Kyler Murray the last year or two, that's when you do worry, where he just, like I said, escapes the pocket and you just see him just constantly running around looking for players. Stay in the Kevin O'Connell system. Just do what Sam Darnold did. Just where to throw, do your progressions. And if it's not there, then you've got the legs. And I think that's where he needs to try and improve this year. And I think he could be one of them where a bounce back, we've seen it with plenty of former number one picks, Baker, which we talked about last week, where if he finds the right home, the right coordinator, he can be, be the next QB for Vikings for the next 4 or 5 years.
Excellent, right. Plenty of time spent on the quarterback. Let's talk about the rest. No question about it. No question. Yeah, that was all right. No question about it. Anyway, Vikings wanted change. After signing a multi-year contract in 2025, GM Adolfo Mensa only lasts one more year as GM. Letting Sam Darnold leave the main reason. Nolan Teasley from Seattle comes in to take over. Yeah, it just seemed a strange one. This was another one where kind of the weird media stories about they were hammering him over his head for having some paternity leave and stuff like that. Just seemed a very strange parting of ways.
Oh, Barron's frozen. Yeah, I got. It was a strange one because it felt like a year or two ago when they had that crazy year. It was like the talk of the town being the best GM. Obviously, not giving Sam Darnold that contract. He wasn't like Seattle had to break the bank and they had to go with JJ McCarthy. That I think that is probably the main reason, seeing your former quarterback going elsewhere for not incredible money and winning the Super Bowl, and a few other decisions they've made in terms of players we'll talk about some of the defense leaving and just the overall. I think they had in place, and some of the picks have not quite worked out. So I think it was a bit harsh in terms of how it was done, but like I said, it feels like there was something brewing in the background, which is like, okay, they wanted to go a different direction. And was the head coach and GM on the same page? And if you had to choose one, you were going to choose the head coach in this scenario.
Excellent. Right. Headline number 3. The Vikings. Jonathan leaves for greener pastures. Anyway, Vikings trade star defensive edge to Eagles for 2/3. Hargrave also sets sails. Flores will be banking on rookie and Turner to step up. Big change. It seems like the changes that have happened on this Minnesota Vikings defense, wherever they've been, Flores has managed to keep it going. Are we expecting him again? Similar scenario where it's still a really good defense, regardless of kind of the personnel changes.
I mean, I expect it. Yeah, in his 3 years in Minnesota, the Vikings' worst finish is 13th in points scoring, top 10 last 2 years. And you mentioned Dallas Turner here, first round pick from 2021 to 24. He got 8 sacks last year. He led the team in sacks, actually. Van Ginkel got 7. So Grenard, I've really rated him as a player, but last year he did fall off, certainly in the numbers. He only had 3 sacks when he had 12 and 12.5 the prior 2 years. So I don't know if he's going to be as big of a miss as it feels on paper. Obviously, we've got Hargrave went there, but they spent 2 rookie picks on DT to fill that need. So I don't see the defense really falling off. I think kind of trust Brian Flores to get in, his cookbook and find something to get going, blitzing or, utilizing his players in unusual ways. So, yeah, I don't really have any qualms about the defense going into 2026.
I would say the only thing with Grenard, I know you mentioned the sack numbers, but I think he was still 4th in pressure rate. And, that is the scheme. But Brian Flores produces where it's a lot of pressure. So it might not have got the sacks, but did he help out Turner to do that? And, a few years ago, they got rid of Daniil Hunter, now it's Grenard. You're just hoping Turner now, can he become that double-digit sack person? And, you rely on Van Ginkel again, which it feels like very scheme. So you hope it doesn't change, because it didn't feel like who they had last year. They were still getting to the quarterback, but it only takes one offensive coordinator to figure out Brian Flores' kind of defensive scheme. And then when it's 1 versus 1, have they got the players to beat that guy? That's my only worry, where you keep losing these star defensive edges and you're just hoping for rookies and youngsters to take the place. But we've seen it also plenty of times where you expect, the defensive tackle's coming in. He was a first-round pick. He's going to, not being a Niners fan, we've had a number of them drafted really high and they've just not worked out. So you're hoping for that, but it's the unknown. And, you think about the contracts and everything like that. But that's my only worry in that sense, that can they actually step up and replace him? Because they need them if, we just talked about the quarterback.
Excellent. Right. Offseason headline number 4. JJ Club recruits another to the Skull Nation. After not getting the contract he desires, wide receiver Juwan Jennings joins Justin Jefferson and JJ McCarthy in Minnesota. Is JJ times 2 plus Addison the best wide receiver? You had me doing some maths there, Joe. Didn't see that coming.
I tried to do squared, but it wasn't quite working with the font size to do times 2.
Excellent. Yeah, 3rd and Juwan, as he was commonly known in San Francisco. Again, does he balance out? Does this feel a nice fit with Jefferson, with Jordan Addison? Is it a complementary addition in Juwan Jennings?
I think so, yeah. I think Addison is, one of the best deep threats in the league. Jefferson could do whatever you want him to. Absolutely incredible. Still one of the elite receivers in the league, regardless of how his numbers looked with that quarterback room last year. But I think Juwan Jennings can come in and contribute. He's known as 3rd and 1 Juwan for a reason, also known as Ho. So, we'll see how that fit works. But yeah, Hawkinson, I think, has kind of he's not looked the same player post ACL injury, which is understandable. He's not a spring chicken by any means. But I think Jennings can help in that intermediate short game a little, getting those tough, hard yards, being a willing blocker, which he always was in San Francisco, why I think Shanahan loved him so much as a player. So, yeah, I think he's a good addition, especially, you look at between him and Kyler Murray, like the money they'd come in for combined, I think is a real big advantage, considering what, on a Kyler Murray on a truly open contract would have received.
Yeah.
Juwan Jennings, maybe because he is regarded as a whole by opposition players, maybe that did drive his value down. I don't know, but it felt like a bargain to me. I'm not going to say he's someone I'm going to be looking to draft in fantasy, but I think in real football, I think he's going to prove a really useful addition as their third receiver with Jalen Naylor leaving town.
Yeah, he was signed for 1 year, $8 million. And I was like shocked that the Niners couldn't get him. But I feel like the Niners just like, okay, we just can't get him because of the amount of money he wants and stuff like that. And I think he speaks a lot again, I don't want to build him up too much, but Kevin O'Connell is probably the best, top 5 head coach in the league. So the fact that they went out and tried and got him, I think that speaks a lot how he's going to fit in there. And you look at his last few years. So last year, he didn't get as many yards, but he got 9 touchdowns last year and 6 touchdowns the year before, taking a huge step from 1. I think he took with the injuries with the 49ers, he took a step up, and it was certainly like their wide receiver 1 for plenty of games last year when players were down. So I think this is a huge to beat. Him being the off-third wide receiver when he's been the 1-2 elsewhere and successful offenses. I do think this is the best wide receiver room when you look at 1 to 3 in terms of the talent, because last year, we always say, just no matter what quarterback, he's quarterback proof. He still got 1,000 yards somehow last year. So he's going to get the ball, but he felt like teams were obviously double teaming him. And once you start double teaming him, like you said, you got Jordan Anderson with the burners. And then Juwan Jennings, he's just the ultimate, they call him a hole because he's one of the players you love him on your team, but you'd hate against him. But he does win them contested catches and then third downs and then touchdowns when they need him. And you mentioned the issue with the third down conversions last year, just right up to Juwan, and he'll get it for you. So I think this is a great pick. When he got it, I couldn't believe how less money he got. And the Vikings managed to get him. I wonder if he's obviously hoped for a big year and then getting more last year, because I think he was how much he was expecting. I think he wanted in the high 10s, 20 million a year, and to only get 8 million for 1 was a surprise.
Yeah, bit of a prove it deal. I love you referenced then just a couple of minutes ago, Byron. TJ Hawkinson is no spring chicken. 28-year-old TJ Hawkinson.
Is he only 28?
28.
He's been in the league a long time, it feels like. Goodness, I'm surprised he's only 20. He must be young coming in.
Yeah, there you go. 2019 draft, so yeah, there you go. He does look a lot older than 28, to be fair. So
he looked older than 28 when he came in, yeah.
Right, let's go to the moves from free agents. I think we've talked to them a lot about them already. Anyone they're going to particularly, there's some sort of names that we've mentioned that they left there: Grenard, Hargrave, Jonathan Allen, Ryan Keller. Anyone that they're going to miss particularly, do you think?
I think, it is a big overhaul on the defensive line there, but I don't know about missed. I think those names stand out, but I wonder if it's more name than game at this point in their careers. So, I'm not too concerned truthfully with any of them.
Excellent. Well, let's have a look at the draft. There's some, again, replacements on the D-line was a big part of the draft. Particularly picks. They spent a first on one of their third-round picks. On that, Caleb Banks, I think it was a bit of a shock when he went 18 that early. He had the foot injury coming out of Florida. And then I think he's going to be probably my favourite rookie of the year. Dominique Orange, big citrus. Very much looking forward to seeing the Iowa State product play. But I think he's going to be a really, really big factor. I think initially he's going to be rotation. But yeah, Dominique Orange, I think, could grow into being that kind of one nose tackle for you. And just, what a great name as well. Anything else that you're expecting to see big impacts from the Vikings draft?
I don't know how much you're expecting Big Citrus to grow. He's already 6'4", 320. But yeah, I'm kind of interested by Dominic Claiborne, the rookie running back. I think sixth rounder, pick 198. Described as a diet Devon Achane. And it's like, well, Devon Achane looks like a pretty diet version of a football player, so I'm not too sure. To me, Aaron Jones, I think, might be completely cooked. I think he looked pretty bad last year. Is there going to be an opportunity for Claiborne to try and make a case? Maybe. He's very fast, 4.37, I think he ran. He's very light, he's very small. Can KOC scheme him something? Maybe in a bit of a game they haven't had previously. Here's what I'm intrigued by. Maybe late off official drops coming up, so it might be something that you take priority on the process there. He's one that kind of stands out as having an opportunity at least.
Excellent. All of that is probably have to get cut, Byron, because it just dropped in and out so much from the moment of you mentioning Claiborne's name all the way through. We're just cutting in and out. So I'll pick that up in the edit. Right, we'll move on anyway, just to say that. And I will clip it back in. Odds for a win total. Win total 8.5 for the Vikings. Where have you guys got the Minnesota Vikings?
I have them at 8 and 9, so I'm probably not touching it, truthfully.
Yeah, I'm with you. Similar 8 and 9, 9 and 8. I think is kind of where I've got them, Joe.
Yeah, well, the bookies knows us too well, doesn't it? Because I've got that as well. I think they're going to be. I think, like I said, it all depends on Kyler. I think if Kyler hits, I think they could get 10, 11 wins, but I'm going to go 8 and 9 as well, just because I think there's going to be a few shaky games in there as well.
Excellent. 20-21 to have over the 8.5 wins. Under 8.5 wins, what is the rattling? Okay, maybe we just do this bit again and I'll cut everything out. Let's look at the odds for the Minnesota Vikings. Over under 8.5 wins. Where have you guys got them? I think I'm 8 and 9, 9 and 8. Byron?
8 and 9 as well, yes. I probably just won't touch this one.
Joe?
Yeah, I think the bookies knows us too well. Just got the perfect lines. Yeah, I've got 8 and 9 as well. Obviously depends on Kyler, where I think if he has a great year, they could get 10 or 11, but I think there's going to be a few shaky games within that season, so I'm going 8 and 9 as well.
Excellent. Yeah, over 21-20, under 20-23. Made the playoffs 8 and 5, so I think, they might be, again, on the peripheries of the NFC wildcard race. And then, 21-10 or 2-1 on 10-21 to not make the playoffs. So, they're kind of thinking that 8 out of 9 wins might not be enough based on that. Let's have a look then, the odds to win the division. 5-1 to win the division. They are the outsiders to win the division. 22-1 to win the NFC. 45-1 to win the Super Bowl. Any interest in that kind of view? If you think about kind of like the Seahawks last year, this kind of feels like the territory we were starting. When you look at the odds for where the Seahawks were to win the division, and see this was kind of the range that the Seahawks were at. I think they were 60-1, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, 60. Yeah.
Do the Vikings feel like putting the pieces together that they could be that team that just makes quite a big leap all of a sudden?
I don't hate it. I will say, on the prior screen, I didn't mind the 8-5 knee, 2-1 on making the playoffs. I don't mind the 5-1 on the division either, really, because as much I have them 8 and 9, I have them third in the division. I don't think it's wild that they can win the division. I think all 4 teams are flawed in ways that they maybe weren't this time last year. I think, we've talked about all the teams there, but is it wild that the Vikings offensive line just pieces together for a season and he's really good? I don't think that's crazy. And Kyler Murray plays, top 15 football. I don't think that's wild. Get an okay running game, and Brian Flores' defense continues to ball out, especially come the playoffs when they can, ramp up their unpredictableness and see what comes. I don't think it's crazy. I don't think I'd bet it at 45-1. I'd probably want something like a 60 or an 80-1 to think about it. But I like the division at 5-1. I think that's certainly in play if, Detroit get defensive injuries, if Chicago's defense does fall off a little. I don't think it's crazy.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like the division. I like the odds best of Vikings and Bears, and they're the third and fourth favorites in terms of the price and just the scale of it. I think they could do a Seahawks. They would have to my only worry is it feels like the Seahawks defense was just every game it was going to be great, no matter what. The Brian Flores, it feels like he has 3 or 4 good games and then one team just exposes it and they just concede loads. And I did feel like the Seahawks had that, so they would have to have the defense to continue being lights out throughout. And then they just, they've got, you look at JSN, you've got Justin Jefferson. When you do the comparisons, I wouldn't be surprised. So but Super Bowl could be a bit too long, but 5-1 for the division, I do actually like that because I think it could be one of them where they're all a one game between each other, and it comes down to head to heads, and anything can happen in games.
Excellent. Well, let's have a look then. Lastly, at our best bets for the NFC North. I'm going for it. This is the year. We talked about it with Ben earlier on in the episode. Finally, Chicago Bears quarterback to get 4,000 yards. Caleb was so close last year. He was 58 yards away last year. Regular season 4,000 yard passer. So I think this is the year we're going to get there. He's got to play again. If he plays all 17 games, he's going to be there or thereabouts. Give me 4,000 plus yards for Caleb Williams at 2-1. I like the price as well. I think it's a good price, 2-1. And then I've got an exact order bet, 16-1. So Lions, Bears, Vikings, Packers in that order. Still think it's going to be close. I don't think the range of wins is going to be too much between them. But Lions, Bears, Vikings, Packers in the order of the NFC North. And that is 16-1. Obviously, real hard to hit all four teams in the exact order. What have you got for us, Byron?
I've gone Sam Laporta to have 8 or more touchdowns. His rookie year, he had 10. Second year, he had 7. Last year was a fall-off, but he only played 9 games. He had 3. We've seen Pettin feature the tight end. I mean, Trey McBride is an incredibly talented player, so it's not a huge surprise. But I think Sam Laporta is a really talented player too. So 8+ touchdowns at 9-4, just over 2-1. And then I had a bit of a trouble with my team one because firstly, I inadvertently copied Joe's bet, which we'll see in a moment. And then when I went to my second choice, it was the exact same order that Paul had for the division. So I've gone to my third choice here, but it kind of touches on Paul's as well there. Packers finished 4th in the division at 7-2. I spoke about what I think the Packers' issues are. Very top-heavy, and all them top-heavy players are all injured. So if they got off to a slow start in a very competitive division, I think 7-2 to finish 4th of a really strong grouping, I don't think is wild. So, 7-2 on the Packers, finish 4th in the division. And Joe, to finish our bets off, please.
Yeah, any Vikings or Packers fans upset with us all going, wanting Bears and Lions? We've all gone the same, so inevitably it's going to be a Vikings-Packers top 2. Because my bet is a Bears-Lions top 2, any order 7-2. I think they're the strongest teams just coming into this season. I think the Packers have got great players, but we've talked about it. It feels a bit up in there with the injuries. You're not sure about the Vikings. But 7-2, Bears, Lions to finish top 2 in the order. And then my player is, we've talked about Jahmyr Gibbs. So I've got the most rushing touchdowns in the regular season at 11-2. I think having the David Montgomery not playing is going to get more time on the field. And I think that at the start of the year, they might try and get Pacheco to get these touchdowns when they're 1 or 2 yards away. But how we saw him against the Chiefs, he couldn't even get a yard. So I think they're just going to keep Gibbs in when he comes to it. And hopefully he's the bell cow who gets these rushing TDs. So I do like the price at 11-2. I just think he's just going to have a huge year. I think he's going to have maybe what Robinson Jr. had last year. I feel like Gibbs is going to step up and it's going to be between them two for the best running back in the league. So I do like that price.
Excellent. Right, that brings us to the end of our NFC North preview episode. Shout out and thanks again to Ben Isaacs for his Bears insight. Go follow Ben at tweets from Ben. And keep an eye on all the content coming up, whether it's from the Nat Coombs Show, College Daze Podcast, everything else in between. Follow us at GTW_GTC. Check out the podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Podbean, anywhere else you get your podcast, and at GTW_GTC across X, Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok as well. Plenty coming up as we run into the season. NFC West up next for our preview, and that'll be with you this time next week.